It's movie time, and we're back again with movie time. Hey, everybody, how you doing? Hopefully, you had a fabulous rest of the week and weekend. And we are here on a special Sunday movie time with Michael Giafriddo, and with me, of course, is my co-host Arpo. Hey, Arpo, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. Had a little bit of fire in the fireplace, and everything is hunky-dory.
Now, in case you're wondering, we have an amazing shirt on him today that says "Enough Excuses." So there really isn't any excuse for being tired, Arpo. We have now tattooed that to him.
I'll talk to you about enough excuses when the show is over, okay?
Yeah. And today also with me is actually, no. In all seriousness, we dressed him like Cherries Garcia yesterday. He got to be the ungrateful Grateful Dead. And also with me is co-host Olaf. Hey, Olaf, how you doing?
Oh, just cruising right along here on the highway. I'm coming to you live from, I don't know, some road going back to Indiana from Chicago. So
Yep.
just having all kinds of fun today.
Excellent. And of course with me is our amazing guest, Michael Gianfriddo. Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
Hey guys, hey Odette, how are you?
Good. Enjoying our life in Chicago.
That's right, and I'm enjoying a glorious sunny day in Toronto, Ontario. That was a joke, by the way, because I mean right now I'm just staring outside and it's overcast. It's the temperature has dropped, so I don't have the fireplace. I'm not as comfortable as everyone else, but I'm still debating whether summer is over or not. But nevertheless, cold and overcast.
Yeah, it's like I'm really hoping that we can get some warm weather still.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. So
well, now it's like I've got a fireplace. I had one installed in the front seat before I left, so I got a fireplace. Oh, wait a minute. I got to stoke the fire a little bit. Hang on. There we go.
Just don't tell me that you're driving through the backwoods of Indiana.
Oh, no, I'm not quite there yet. I'm still getting out of Chicago.
That'll be the next 2.5 hours.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, Michael, the last time that we had spoken, we had talked about a lot about the financial updates. So are there any new financial updates that have happened since we last spoke? And can you review some of the financing information that we had talked about?
Well, since the last time we spoke, there's been a lot of updates. Again, as our viewers have notably, seen in terms of my last two interviews on the shows, I'm always, brutally honest and always transparent. The updates are both, good and bad. So there's pros and cons. So you have obviously, the pros where, money's still going into the industry, and then, the cons where a lot of money is going out of the industry. And I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of all the various scandals that are going on right now. So a lot of the investors are they're not too happy. They're scared in terms of, investing their money into the industry. But nevertheless, there are, that money is still available. But, a lot of the specific updates, really stem from, the current transition that's going on right now. In my opinion, from what I've seen, I think that, equity is still a fundamental component in a film transaction. Not necessarily a necessity in terms of what I've said, previously, but nevertheless. Yes. It is a component, an essential component, and it's still available. But it is dried up. A lot of it is dried up, and a lot more of it is getting dried up, actually. So we're really kind of we're making that transition, and we're venturing into a territory where I think we're immediately going to have to find new ways to finance motion pictures, and I've been saying that for quite a while in terms of advice that I've been giving. And I think just a lot of production companies, a lot of producers are just going to have to, at the end of the day, be forced to to go with the flow. If they're not innovating, if they're not finding new ways, and other people do, they're just going to have to essentially follow the crowd, so to speak. But just kind of expanding on those updates. Like I said, a lot of pros and cons, specifically in regards to the equity. A lot of interesting things going on in China. I'm pretty sure, Odette, you're aware of that.
Yes.
And in China, I've been saying it for the longest time. China's, again, pros and cons, right? So you have a lot of these people that are coming in essentially with blank checkbooks and writing checks, but they don't really have they don't have the business acumen. They don't have that industry experience to, monetize essentially these assets that they're purchasing. And obviously it shows now, things with Bona and, the companies that have purchased Legendary. Now they're turning around and they're trying to basically unload those assets now to a third party. So obviously you've seen, the effects of essentially having an unlimited checkbook. But again, if you don't have the infrastructure and the means to monetize those assets, essentially, what you're purchasing has no value. It's worthless at the end of the day. That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
And I think really, to be quite honest, is in terms of where the industry is going, it's really just finding, new ways to get movies financed, to get things done. We can discuss a little bit more of that in terms of the various techniques that I've discussed before, in terms of various methods and techniques. At the end of the day, I just want to remind our viewers, like I've said before, it doesn't matter how the movie gets done, as long as it gets done and financed and it's legal. Everybody kind of, not everybody, let me rephrase. There's a lot of people that just have this kind of very warped perspective that there's only one way to finance movies. You got to, have X amount in senior debt and X amount in, gap or subordinated debt, and then try to make up the rest in equity, or try to slice and dice that equity. And that's a common, misconception. I mean, if you have the equity, great. I'm not going to argue that point, but that's not the only way to get a movie done. And just touching back on the updates, yes, that's a significant update. That's a significant update because you are quickly seeing that transition. You are quickly seeing money drying up. I mean, on just one last point in regards to that question, Odette, is just look at all the publications. Very rarely,
True.
Like last year and the year before, around Cannes and TIFF and Berlin, you had, I don't know how many announcements. So-and-so, solidifies a pact, to finance X amount of motion pictures, or this investor's coming in, that investor's coming in. This year, I can't even remember at TIFF, at Cannes, an actual major announcement of saying this investor is now stepping in to get involved in financing movies, or this bank is coming in to renew this credit line. It's really slowed down a lot. And it's slowed down a lot because a lot of investors have taken a serious hit.
Well, yeah, and it's actually become quite the opposite. And sometimes they're doing like really low deals. You heard about the one at Toronto where that company had a great deal. They decided that they were going to screen the movie and wound up with a horrible deal at the end of it.
Exactly.
Because they chose to wait.
That's right. And you have companies like Netflix that are just buying up anything and everything. And listen, doing business with Netflix, I don't have a problem with Netflix. I think Netflix is great. There are pros and cons to their business model, but I think for the most part, if you have an IP, a specific IP that fits the criteria of Netflix, I think it could be a great choice. But with anything, it's got to be collaborative. And the projects that I'm involved in right now, one is a major sci-fi TV series that I'm behind, and it's gotten major industry interest just because there's a gap in the market. It's sci-fi, so a lot of people are gravitating toward it because you don't really have that a lot of sci-fi content on the air. But Netflix has been coming up a lot, and in terms of gaining traction and interest from them.
Yes.
But again, it's got to be collaborative. If Netflix just wants to purchase it and have creative control, again, it depends in terms of what your objective is. There are pros and cons to anything, but You have a lot of, heavy players that are now stepping in: Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, just a lot more people that are just expanding their portfolio, and they're starving. They're hungry for content, especially Netflix. Like, they're absolutely just starving. They're absolutely starving for content, and you see it. I mean, I don't know about Canada's version of Netflix. Canada's version of Netflix is
the sanitized version of Netflix.
Yeah, that's the polite way of putting it. But I mean, Netflix in Australia, Netflix in the U.S., other places in the world. I mean, it's such a phenomenal platform. So, again, pros and cons. Dealing with any sort of network, any sort of distributor.
Absolutely, because they're also very much in competition with each other to get content as well, because it's like they don't want to cross content.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of them are also becoming their own studios.
A lot of them are. Netflix especially. Amazon is really expanding. Boy, are they ever. So they're really just wanting to, become a major player, almost be on par with Netflix. If not, I mean, Amazon really wants to be a direct competitor to Netflix. If not, I mean, they might be already, or they're definitely on their way. So.
And the fact that they're also creating their own content is becoming quite the interesting factor with them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But again, I mean, there's when you look at content, there's I mean, unless depending on how big they're, depending on the type of risk that they want to take. I mean, they're not really, coming out with like, major motion pictures in terms of like heavy special effects and really pouring, millions and millions of dollars into their marketing. I mean, not compared obviously to the studios, but it really depends in terms of where they want to go long term. People like, companies like Netflix and Amazon. And I think they definitely want to go far. But, I, in my honest opinion, I think they are putting, or they have been, and they're probably making their way, they're probably making their way out. But I think they have been, from what I've seen, they've been putting a little bit restrictions, and a few restrictions in terms of the content that they've been taking on. I think that they want to kind of just fill. I mean, listen, I've seen some recent Netflix films. I'm not going to name any, but with prominent producers that I really respect. They've got great track records. I mean, some producers attached to some of these Netflix films that I know personally. And I watch these films on Netflix, and I'm like, oh my goodness! Like, I just cannot believe that they actually produce something like that. I mean, one film really comes to mind. It was so horrendously bad. It was just like, it was unwatchable. But the price made sense, obviously, for those producers. They got it financed, and at the end of the day, they got to make a movie, and a lot of people ended up watching it. A lot of people probably liked it. A lot of people probably didn't. I was one of the ones that didn't. But to each his own.
And what's nice is also a lot of television content is being made on it too, which is also kind of giving them the TV networks their own run for the competition.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. This particular TV project. I mean, there's another TV project that's based on real life events, and I personally think that for A&E. I mean, A&E has come up in our conversations, Netflix, but I think those type of shows should absolutely start making their way to Amazon and Netflix, and just really kind of broaden that, essentially broaden their reach, broaden their current platform, and really take them to the next level. I mean, obviously, in terms of Netflix has already made a huge play. I don't know if you read in terms of that. I think it was that Jimmy Hoffa movie with Martin Scorsese and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro. I mean, there's like major. I mean, that's like. I mean, you've got the the Golden Opera there, and for me, that's a very smart play by Netflix. But again, how do you monetize that? I mean, okay, sure, you're banking on those names, which is great, which is fantastic, but still, content. It still boils down to content. not everybody's just going to watch something because De Niro's in it or because Pacino's in it. As we
That's
discussed.
right.
As we discussed previously, Odette, is audiences have become
Yes.
so much more smarter, so much more sophisticated, and it shows. And it shows in the numbers. I mean, why is it that a low-budget horror movie that is made for $2 or $3 million ends up grossing, 50, 60, 100 plus $100 million when you have something that's based on, a graphic novel, or you have something like Valerian, Luc Besson's movie, and it does horrendously bad. So, I mean, it all depends in terms of the content and your strategy in terms of monetizing it.
And also your marketing plans as well. And that's huge.
Absolutely. But it's also just really just studying the market very heavily and really just being very strategic, which I know takes a lot of time. And believe me, I'm one that doesn't have any patience in anything. I'm a businessman, and I like to get things done and make money as quickly as possible. But at the end of the day, you're looking at long term. If you have something that's sci-fi, something that the market is hungry for, that it requires, put in that extra effort and really be strategic. Look at the comps, look at the various markets, what people are watching at any given time in a day, and really target those opportunities in the market.
A lot of the things that also are happening is with diversity, like the major factor in the tax credits, also in terms of finance, and also stories that are being told. So what are some of the the places that are embracing these changes?
Well, I can tell you some of the places that have been coming up recently on my side. Atlanta, definitely number one. Their tax credits have become extremely generous. And there's a lot of productions that are flocking to Georgia, and Pinewood just recently, obviously, completed a studio there. So with state-of-the-art sound stages, and then there's talks in terms of expanding that, and the construction of additional sound studios as well, sound stages as well. But in Georgia, you can receive up to about 30%, back, and then you have different levels. Like, for example, Georgia's Entertainment Industry and Investment Act, provides an additional about, I think it's 20% for companies that spend $500,000 or more on production and post production in Georgia. And then the state grants an additional 10% tax credits, if the finished project includes a promotional logo provided by the state. So you've seen, I've seen that very recently, in films where you just have the Georgia logo that just that just show up, and you can receive that 10%, that 10% boost, which is very smart on the state of Georgia. And then other places, another place that has been coming up, which I recently found out about from a colleague, and it was quite interesting, is Finland. Finland is another great place. They offer, I believe it is, I think it's about 25% of the spend in Finland. And then, of course, if you're originally Canadian, you can max out, you can further max out the tax credits by plugging into that co-production. So if you did it between, let's just say, Vancouver and Finland, and you would have to meet the co-production requirements. So you would have to have, key Canadian crew on the Canadian side, and then key Finnish crew on the Finland side, and then you could probably look at as a Finnish with a Finnish co-producer and a co-production, probably covering up to about 50% of the production costs for the Finnish co-producing partner. So it's very it's very lucrative. It's very lucrative. It's very competitive, but it all depends. I mean, Finland. I mean, if you look at Finland, and if you look at Georgia, or if you look at Finland and Vancouver, I mean, again, there's pros and cons. So, the numbers probably make sense, depending on the production, but infrastructure may not. I mean, Vancouver's infrastructure or Los Angeles's infrastructure versus Finland's, they're not really obviously the same. So you don't have state-of-the-art facilities in Finland. Obviously, they're getting a lot better. better. But currently, you don't have state-of-the-art facilities. You don't have, like, you know, what downtown Toronto has
Exactly.
at Pinewood Studios. But they're getting there. So it really depends in terms of what you want to do. If you're doing a period piece, you know, it might make sense to, you know, to do it in Finland. Maybe shoot the exteriors in Finland, and maybe do, you know, either post-production in Finland, or maybe do post-production in Vancouver. You know, there's various ways to there's various ways to slice it in terms of, you know, trying to put together the most you know, beneficial and creative tax credit package, depending on, again, in terms of the content. So depending on what you're trying to produce. Another place is Iceland. Iceland is again, you know, being very, very generous with their tax credits. I think it's up to between 25-30%, I believe it is. And Iceland is on a side note, Iceland is absolutely on my bucket list. It's an absolutely I look at these pictures, Odette, and they're just jaw-dropping.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
I mean, just like they're like literally right out of like you think you're on an alien planet. So I mean, like, for me, I'm just living to go to Iceland. But again, you know, they have very generous tax credits there. They have a great film commission there. You know, but again, it just boils down to content. What type of story are you trying to tell? And you know, teaming up with, you know, Icelandic producers. And you know, if you're originally Canadian, you can really take full advantage of those co-production treaties, like I've spoken about before in our previous interviews. You know, those co-production treaties are a you know, phenomenal tool, a phenomenal resource, if it makes sense. You know, you have to team up, first of all, obviously, with the right producers. So, you know, obviously you have to make sure that there's chemistry there. You obviously there's synergy, and you know, and put together the right team. And if everything makes sense, you can have a very, very very lucrative and valuable tax credit package, for sure.
Definitely, as well as also places like Fiji, etc.
Absolutely, Fiji for sure. Absolutely, Hawaii is also getting better as well. I know Hawaii is really trying to make a really serious play to really boost up their industry over there in terms of driving more productions there. I mean, you know, Jurassic, you know, the new Jurassic World movie is being shot there. You know, other major motion pictures have shot there. So I mean, but I know that Hawaii is not really, you know, as competitive as, you know, Georgia or Toronto or Vancouver or Calgary. But I have definitely heard that they want to start making a very serious play to be in you know, a major competitor in terms of driving more business to the islands.
Absolutely.
We've talked about breaking into the industry before. Can you tell us maybe some stories that you've come across that might serve as cautionary tale or tales of triumph?
Absolutely. Do you want the good or the bad first?
Well, let's start with the bad. So we get on a high note.
So you want to start with the bad? Well, I don't know where to start, but I guess let's just dive right in. Well, I guess where we could start is, I would say, being open-minded. You know, really just. You can't be arrogant. Don't be arrogant. Don't be ignorant. You know, I mean, because in terms of the stories that, you know, that I'm aware of, or things that I've faced, is a lot of arrogance, a lot of ignorance is really kind of you know, been a huge factor. You know, I'm wondering in terms of how detailed I want to be, but in terms of in terms of specific tales, I would say, basically, just to simplify it, is know who you're getting into business with. You know, just know your partners. You know your audience, but first and foremost, know your partners. Really get the time to really know each other. Do you guys all have the same objective? Is one person more impatient than the other? Does one have a specific vision compared to somebody else? And then also the one thing that I've come across very recently in my own my own personal experience is one of the reasons why things really why there's this tales of caution versus tales of championing, but specifically tales of caution. Is in any venture, in any transaction, but specifically a film, there has to be ultimately one decision maker. There has to be one leader, one decision maker, and that's really when you really hit the iceberg and you start, the ship starts sinking, and the only way to keep that boat afloat is for everybody to work together as a unit, as a team. And unfortunately, through my personal experience, that's more of tales of caution than it is of tales of championing, because people that you thought that you could rely on, or people that you thought were could be there for you, or they had the same objective or the same vision, end up not. And a lot of people in this industry are really only interested in the bottom dollar. It's really sad, and I've had that personal experience, so that's definitely a tale of caution. Stay away from people whose only objective is to make money, because if your objective is to make movies and make money, stay away from those people. I've met too many of them, because it is the unfortunate fact that a lot of people in the film industry pretend that they're in the motion picture industry when they're really just in the money industry, and they end up really just hurting themselves, even though they don't notice and they don't realize that they're hurting themselves. But they end up hurting themselves. They end up hurting everyone around them, and above all, they end up really hurting the film or the TV show, or whatever you're trying to produce, whatever product you're trying to get out there into the market. So really, that's probably my tale. That one tale of caution is just know the people, really take the time to know the people that you're getting involved in before you start drafting contracts and partnership agreements and signing on the dotted line. Even your own friends. If you think that they're your friends, friendship and business are two different things. Friendship and money are two different things. So really just know who you're getting involved in before you actually, sign your life away on that dotted line, because like I said, I've made those mistakes very early on in my career, and obviously you learn from them. But that would be my advice in terms of tales of caution, or at least my one tale of caution, which probably comprises all different stories, different experiences. But just know the people that you're getting involved in, getting involved with. And then in terms of tales of championing, I would say that, for me, I guess there's various, there's so many tales of championing, but I guess the one that I would really say is just perseverance, tenacity, just never giving up, even though I've had my fine share of letdowns and people trying to screw me over and things of that nature. Just never let that deter you. So, and I've never let that deter me. And it's just you just never give up, and you always push forward, because at the end of the day, it's other people that affect your rise to the top of the ladder. So my mindset has always been, well, why am I going to let somebody else affect me and stop me from climbing to the top of the ladder? I'm going to climb to the top of the ladder. I don't care what anybody else has to say. I don't care what anybody else has to think. I'm going to get to that top of the ladder. You're going to try to stop me, and that's fine. But I have the tenacity, I have the perseverance, and I'm going to get to that top of the ladder, regardless. So I would say that that's definitely been my one tale of championing, which is everything that has affected me negatively in terms of, things that I've learned things that I've learned from, things that I'm very cautious of. Have given me the strength to get to the top of that ladder a lot faster, and essentially is my ultimate tale of championing, so to speak.
And both of those really apply not just to filmmaking, but to all artistic endeavors.
Absolutely. It's just it's. In anything, if we're talking about the cautionary side, absolutely know the people that you're getting involved with before you actually get involved with them. And it could be, and listen, I mean, to all of our viewers, it could just be the fact that, you know, okay, well, they're a very notable casting director, or they're a very notable producer, or they're a very notable director. Who cares? Nobody cares. You shouldn't care. Credit, filmography, are they important? Absolutely. Of course they're important. But now really nobody cares. What people really care about, and I'm one of them, especially on the finance side, is delivery. Can this actually be delivered on time, on budget, successfully? No drama, no games, nobody worrying about having to screw somebody over and then suing somebody for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody wants that. The investors don't even want that. I mean, I could tell you so many horror stories. One particular investor is like a brother to me. You just don't want to run into that. You want to get involved with people that you can trust. And like I said, investors that I know, they're still out their money. They're still collecting. Some of them are actually collecting their money till today.
Wow.
And you don't even want to know the amount of years that have passed. And it's just because, again, they thought that they wanted to get involved, have fun, have a good time. But again, you're getting involved with people that either don't know the finance game, they don't know how to properly manage money, or they don't know how to how to properly spend, allocate their resources, money to deliver things on time and on budget. So it always goes back to that tale of caution, which is know who you're getting involved with before you actually get involved with them. And just spend a whole bunch of time with them. You have no idea the amount of man hours that I've spent with just the amount of blood and sweat. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I have no regrets. But the amount of time that I've spent with investors and investment bankers, but specifically private investors and high net worths. With private investors and high net worths, it's all about, Mike, I don't care about an NDA. I don't care about a non-circumvention. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. If you're taking my money, can I look you in the face and know and believe, regardless of any paper that I sign, that you're going to get me back my money? And if you can do that, that's great. And unfortunately, a lot of people in Hollywood can't. And I've sat right across from them, and all they care about is that bottom dollar. They don't care about, and that's the other thing, is that investors now, and Odette, we spoke about this in our previous interviews.
Oh yeah.
Investors now are just so sophisticated, and just because they don't say anything, it's all about body language, And a lot of people in Hollywood don't know that. A lot of people in Hollywood, they think, and I'm going to be blunt, but it's a fact, is that a lot of people in Hollywood, they think that investors and people in the finance world are all idiots. And I've sat across from people, in meetings, in restaurants, and people in Hollywood that just absolutely feel that and believe that investors are idiots. And I look at them, and I immediately laugh, and then of course I get up and leave, because if you just look at the facts and you look at the reality, again, another cautionary tale is, look who's actually on the winning side and look who's actually on the losing side. So you have how many companies now? Relativity went down.
Yep.
Weinstein Company is going down. All these companies are now going through either going down, they're restructuring, they're in massive amounts of debt, because at the end, Sony just recently lost their investment partner. It's the same thing. It's all tales of caution. Know who you're getting into business with. And it doesn't matter if things are good, for the first, year, 2 years, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. It doesn't matter. Know who you're getting into business with. Know who your friends are. Know who your enemies are. Because in any transaction that I get involved with, I'm in it for the long run. I'm not just interested in making money for the first 2 years and then walking away. So that's my ultimate tale of caution in any regard. But as it specifically applies to Hollywood.
It's true, because you want to make sure that it's like whoever that you're doing business with, that you have that simpatico ethic. And I don't think that enough times that the finance side of the industry, because they have a controversy happening with the creative side of the industry, so it really does affect that relationship. And at the end of the day, the business working relationship, how do we get out of those weeds in terms of that issue?
Well, and that's a very interesting question, but there is a consensus. There really is. There is a consensus. There is a there is a belief from the investors side, from the finance side, specifically private investors, and I fully agree with them. Listen, I've been on the other end of on phone calls, and these are personal, and some of them are personal friends of mine, and I haven't even broached the subject. I didn't even broach the subject. It's just them. One or two in particular. That happened to me, again, personal friends of mine, where they just come right out and they've said it, and they've said, listen, I know that, you know, because a lot of investors that I know, they call me and they ask for my advice. Mike, what do you think? Should I put my money into this? What do you think? Can you vet it out for me? So on and so forth. And they end up just asking me, you know, Mike, I know that this producer thinks that I'm an idiot. You know, I know that they think that I'm just going to, you know, just give them the money because they're bringing so, and I'm listening to this and my mouth is shut. So I'm just listening to this and I'm just thinking to myself, it's what I've been warning people. Investors today are not stupid, because one investor has lost money, another investor has lost money, 3 investors have lost money. That's okay. So you think to yourself, well, you know what? I've made 3 movies and unfortunately those 3 investors have lost money. But don't ever think that one investor doesn't talk to the other investor. And that investor, and maybe that investor spoke to a friend or maybe a cousin, and that cousin happens to know an investment banker, and that investment banker happens to know somebody else. The word gets around, and that's what I'm saying. And that's why the industry right now, in terms of people wanting to come in and invest, is really tainted. That's why China's really coming in and saying, well, we don't really want to invest. I mean, that's why the way people interpret it, and this is my personal opinion, and I know a lot of people are going to argue it, but this is just based on what I've seen, is that we don't really want to invest, okay? We really just want to come in and we want to acquire. That's really what we're doing. So we'll invest, absolutely we'll invest, but we'll invest after we purchase, after we own 100%, after we know that the buck stops with us. That's when we'll invest. But we're not going to really invest in somebody else's, you know, venture or somebody else's company that, let's say, owns 65% or 85%, you know, majority. And it's like, well, the buck actually stops with them, but we're actually putting our money into their company, into their venture. Many years ago, it was like that, because people were, you know, the industry was thriving, people were profiting. But now just too many people have lost money, where now people want to be in control. I mean, so much so that now investors are basically saying, like, some transactions that I'm working on right now, which are more corporate opportunities. Yeah, exactly. Like more corporate opportunities to say, hey, listen, you know, Mike, we need a line of credit, or we need an equity investment, or we need some sort of, you know, term loan as a senior debt to, you know, into our company to produce, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 motion pictures. And now you see that a lot of those private investors are coming in and saying, sure, yeah, I'm interested. I really like your business model on the, you know, for the company. I like your team. You guys have a track record. Absolutely, I'm very interested in putting in the money, but I want a seat on your board.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like some people immediately take back and say, well, why do you want a seat on our board? And the investor responds and say, well, why can't I have a seat on your board? Why not? I want to get involved involved in the industry. Okay, you know, I have $1 billion to spend, but what? I mean, I'm just a checkbook. I want to get involved. I want to be a partner. I want to have some input in terms of, and a lot of people in Hollywood, depending on who they are, a lot of people in Hollywood have become more open-minded, but there's still the perspective out there that people that just sign checks and want to invest in Hollywood are idiots, and all they know is about the money. And we're just going to sell them on, you know, the stars and the names and the glitz and the glamour. And if they happen to lose their money, oh well, sorry, Mr. Investor, you know, well, let's try on the next one. And that's when a lot of things go down. So it all goes back to that one tale of that ultimate tale of caution. Know who you're getting into business with. Know who you're getting involved with.
Also understanding that the vanity investor that it used to be in the days gone by is not any longer. It's like they're not impressed by the names. They're impressed by the number, and they want to know exactly when are they getting their money back.
Exactly. When are they getting their money back? And more importantly, you know, how soon can they start receiving their money back? I mean, that's the thing. And even now, even I mean, just going back to the private sector, I mean, believe me, I've been put on the spot, you know, more times than I can count, even from the private sector, private investors that are even personal friends of mine, where they've even said, you know, Mike, this is a great opportunity. It's a great investment. The players are there. Great. The risk is substantially reduced. But let me ask you a question. Why is it that you to walk down the street to B of A and just collateralize it and pay a lower interest rate. And immediately you're like put on the spot and say, you know what? My goodness, I'm thinking to myself, he actually has a point. Why am I not? Why do I want to take his equity when I can literally just, just do a little tweaking and collateralize, essentially, either collateralize some unsold territories and look at structuring it as a gap loan. So why can't I do that? Why do I want to take why do I want to take his equity? And you know what? You have to be on the spot and really answer those questions, because, and like I said, I've been asked those questions. Mike, this is such a great opportunity, but they think that it sounds too good to be true. Why do they think that it sounds too good to be true? Because they've heard from their buddies, because they've heard from people in the industry that have lost money, where those investors heard, this is a great opportunity, you're going to make some money, I promise you. They end up losing, and the word goes around. So even if it's a phenomenal airtight opportunity from the private sector, just believe 100% that they're still jaded and that they're still skeptical. Just the fact that they say, oh, this sounds really great, it's fantastic, it's phenomenal. No, they think it's phenomenal. They think it's great. It's a lucrative opportunity, but in the back of their mind, they're asking themselves, is it too good to be true? Why are they giving me such a great ROI? But to be quite honest, there are people like me and Odette, people like you, where really what we're offering them is genuine. There's no hidden schemes. It's really genuine, but the perspective, because so many people have lost money. That's why I'm always on the investor side. 1,000,000%, I'm always on the investor side in any case, because they have heard the horror stories. Either they've been involved or they've either been directly affected or indirectly affected, and they've heard all the stories, and they just think that, right now any sort of film related opportunity, it's just tainted. It's just the industry, a lot of the industry, film in general, is just tainted. I mean, I know so many high net worths that I'm doing other, real estate transactions with, and I sometimes broach the subject. I'm like, hey, listen, do you want to get involved in no? And I immediately say, yeah, but why not? You don't even know what I'm offering you. We're having such great success on this transaction. Okay, granted, it's in a completely separate. No, it's film. I've heard, I've heard all the horror. So you can't even get past first base. So that's why it goes back to my, it's a cautionary tale. Know who you're getting involved with, but also it's part of that transition where you're going to have to be forced to look at other ways to finance movies. I mean, so many movies recently have come across my desk where all they're looking for is equity. And these are major stars in the movie. Oh, we're looking for equity. Oh, so-and-so's in the movie. This major A-list star is in the movie. And they're all looking for equity. And I look at them and I'm saying, you're never going to get that size of equity in today's market. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. And then of course, well, Mike, we don't believe you and blah, blah, blah. And then come 2 years later, 3 years later, it's still being shopped out there and it's still not being done. When I look at them and I say, but the objective here is to get a deal done. What is the difference between debt and equity? In my honest opinion, there's a fundamental difference between debt and equity. Fundamental, okay? But at the end of the day, if it gets the deal closed and the movie made and you have money in your pocket to pay your bills or pay your mortgages or put food on the table for your family, why do you care what it's called? Why do you care what it's called? And that's what I've said to people. And I can never get a definitive response from the other side, which is people in the industry. Why do you care what it's called? Why do you care if something is called, scrambled eggs versus sunny side? It doesn't matter. It's still eggs. You're still eating. You're putting it in your mouth. It's good for your system. You're still getting your protein. Why do you care what it's called? And that goes back to my original statement, where it's now part of this transition that is being forced upon people in the industry, where now this equity, this opportunity in terms of, all this equity is now closing up, and it's closing up at a rapid pace. And now people are forced to look at other ways to finance movies. And listen, they're either going to go with the flow or they're not. I could tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going with the flow, because at the end of the day, as long as the movie gets made, okay, I'm paying interest on debt versus I'm not paying immediate interest up front on equity. But guess what? If it gets the movie made and it ends up grossing $50, $100 million and I only spent $5 to $10 million, why do I care?
Exactly. Also, another trend is happening that there's now starting to become the responsible filmmaker as well on the other side. Because any responsible filmmaker who's looking to do a film has got to look at it from the investor's point of view and the business side of film. They can't look at it any longer as this great creative artistic vision. So do you think at this point in time that and this is again in your opinion, it's like that if education is doing enough for filmmakers to make them understand the business side a film, and if so, what can we do to round out any of those shortfalls?
In terms of education?
Yeah. We're not educated.
No, we're not. So you're talking about like schools, right? Schools and
not only schooling, but also educating them enough to understand. You have to look at the business side of this. This is a business. This isn't any longer the creative game that you thought of. Yes, the creative vision is important, but there has to be keeping in mind always your business side of it.
Well, and I mean that's the one topic that I'm always extremely passionate about, especially if I was, standing in a room, with a sold out crowd in terms of, really finding that one subject to talk about. It would be this one subject. And Odette, I think when you and I first met face to face, that was one of the very key things that we started talking about. I absolutely believe that there's nothing being done in terms of educating people, in terms of the reality of the industry, especially institutions, colleges, universities. I mean, they're like, this is how you pick up a camera. This is what a lens is, and so on and so on. And are those absolutely critical? Of course it is. It's absolutely critical. But we now live in a day and age where if you want to get movies made, you must know the business side. Either go to the library, self-educate yourself, talk to people, make friends, social networking, befriending investors, get to really know the business side. Because if you don't know that business side, you can have a degree from UCLA, you can have a degree from, USC. Is it going to get you some interviews? Is it going to get you in some doors? Absolutely. Of course it will. Will it get you to the top of that ladder? Absolutely not, if you don't know the business side. So we're not really doing anything in terms of educating people, in terms of saying, hey, listen, here's what tax credits are. Here's what a hybridized approach to a financial stack looks like when you're financing, a motion picture. Here's what senior debt looks like. Here's what mezzanine is.
Yes,
here's what equity is. Here's all the things that you can do. Here are the tools that you can use. But then again, there's pros and cons to that, because we're going through that transition. But several years ago, when people were educated about that, it was only one way. Well, X amount in senior debt, X amount in gap, and then the rest has to be made up in equity. And that's why a lot of these movies have not been made. And that's just the one thing that I have told people. And listen, people have called me stupid and an idiot for but I talk to investors on a daily basis. And I've spoken to some investors and they've said, Mike, if there's 100% coverage, okay, why would we not finance the whole thing as debt? It's just, why wouldn't we? Okay, we're actually getting a greater return on our money. So again, it always goes back to, what are we educating people here? For me, I would want to educate people. Here are all the techniques, all the ways in terms of how to finance a movie. Not like, well, this is the only way that you have to do it. You must come in with a certain amount of debt, which is collateralized by your tax credits. It's collateralized by your pre-sales or an MG. And then you have your gap, which is essentially collateralized by the unsold territories. And then if you have a gap, you have to come in with that, with the remaining amount of equity. Okay, so what about everything else? What about reducing the budget? What about, offsets? What about sweat equity? What about product integration? All these other different, to eat away, like I've said to you, that many times, you're eating away at that capital stack. You're eating away at it. I'm not saying that there's never going to be a requirement for equity, There may always be a requirement for equity, but you should never look at that as like that's the only solution. And that's the problem. People have been educated about that, and we have to start educating people in terms of that's not the only way to finance a movie. You know, like a television series, for example. Okay. Now, many people have different ideas in terms of, you know, funding television shows. For me, when I finance a television series, now this is all subject to having sufficient collateral. But if I have a sufficient network license and I have tax credits, okay, and I have a gap, why can't I work to reduce that gap in order to close it? Or maybe I take a cut in my fee, or maybe the post-production house takes a cut, or the visual effects company takes a cut, or they're putting in sweat equity or whatever it is. And the whole thing gets done as 100% debt. It's 100% loan. So why? So because it's 100% debt, I'm not supposed to take that because it doesn't have equity in it?
True. And it's called responsible filmmaking.
It's called responsible filmmaking, but at the end of the day, it's also called, you're in the business of making money, of making deals. It's about deal making, not deal breaking.
Yes.
You know? And it's the same thing in any industry. And that's why I'm saying, like, I could not stress that enough. Like, people have to start standing up, whether it be in a classroom or whether it be, you know, in the industry, at an event, AFM, CAN, whatever it is. And if somebody, and if a sales agent says, because even the perspective, a lot of sales agents even have that same perspective. Oh, great! You have the debt portion. You have the mezz, which is the gap, and you have everything else. You have your sweat equity here. Great, from product integration. So where's your equity? And we have to start getting out of that mindset. It's like, why do you care if there's equity? If I have a private investor or a bank or an investment banker that has said, Mike, you know what? Because we have to keep in mind here, right, is that one of the reasons why equity exists is based on the LTV scale, which is the loan to value. So a lot of banks and a lot of investors will not necessarily collateralize and give you 100% value of that paper. So if you have a minimum guarantee from a distributor, and that distributor basically says, Mike, here's $5 million, chances are we have to do due diligence, of course, on that distributor, unless it's a major studio.
Yes.
But due diligence on that distributor, are they good? You know, if that producer doesn't repay me my $5 million, then I have to go chase after the company that essentially issued that MG. So how do they look like financially? Are they just Joe Schmo off the street? Have they been in the business for several years? Are they good in terms of if the producer is in default and I have to go collect my money, are they good for repaying me on that money? So depending on the risk involved in that, an investor in a bank is essentially going to reduce in terms of their advance up front. So instead of giving you 100%, they might give you 85. They might give you 90. They might give you 95. They might even give you 100%. But in most cases, they'll give you 90%. Same thing with like tax credits. You know, we know that Canadian tax credits, you know, Canadian tax credits have a great reputation, but again, it's all depending on the risk. So one of the reasons why the equity exists is because a lot of these lenders, a lot of these banks do not advance 100% against this collateralized portion of the capital stack, which is the senior portion. And then obviously, of course, you have your unsecured, which is the gap, which is against the unsold territories. But for the most part, even against the unsold territories, they're not giving you 100% of the value up front as an advance. So then you're always going to have that gap. But then it always goes back to, well, do you maybe have to shoot in that region? Can you shoot it there? And maybe that investor, you know, maybe is not comfortable with that part of the world, but this investor over here, he's lent, you know, against tax credits on 10 movies, and he's very comfortable. He's, you know, he's never had to go chase his money. So he's been lending 100%. So let's get 100% on that. That eats away at the equity. Okay, on the pre-sales, same thing. Well, can I get the same deal here, maybe over here? And over here, this banker, this investor is very comfortable with that. So they'll lend me maybe 95% or maybe 100%. So it always goes back to that same thing in terms of saying, know what you're getting involved with. Know who you're getting involved with. Because at the end of the day, there's not one way to finance movies. And I hope that everybody's listening. There is not one way to finance movies. And anybody that tells you that there is, they're wrong. And they don't know financing. They don't know how the finance game works. They're just basically following the advice of what they've heard from another producer who has told another producer his experience from this producer and that production company and that investment banker. It's basically one word passed along to the other, but nobody really understands how to get a movie financed and how to get a movie done. And to be quite honest, is that it's a free-for-all. If it makes sense and the investor or the banker is comfortable with it, and a sales agent says, well, you need equity. Well, what I've usually said to some sales agents, are you the one writing me the check? Okay, so if you're not the one writing me the check, your only job is to sit down and shut up. Because
True.
If you're only giving me pre-sales and MG, that's what your only job is. And that's why I've gotten into heated arguments with some sales agents, because they try to get involved in the financing side. If you're not putting up any money and I'm only coming to you to basically sell my movie or pre-sell my movie, and I'm bringing in the financing, whether it be from a private investor or a bank or whatever, your only job is to do your job. I'm hiring you to do one job. It's above your pay grade for you to ask me, am I coming in with equity? It's none of your business. If I have a bank or if I have a private investor that has said, I'm giving you, Mike, 100% debt, just bring me sufficient collateral. If my budget is $5 million, Mike, I will give you $5 million, but I have to be 115 or 120 or 110% collateralized, as an extra buffer, so that 10% or 15 or 20% buffer. Then why does anybody else care if I have equity versus me having a fully completed and a fully financed movie?
Yeah, and how they did it.
Exactly. So it all goes back to that. Really, just we have to educate more and more people in terms of how to actually get movies done. And there's not only one way to get a movie done.
There's multiple ways, and it's being smart filmmakers and being responsible filmmakers.
That's right. And not only that, but also responsible, businessmen, businesswomen,
Yeah.
Both men and women that understand the industry, that know, listen, this is the risk that we're taking. This is how we're going to be generating returns back to the investors. And just making them feel as comfortable as possible. Because listen, with any investor, especially in today's day and age, they all want their money back. Okay, that's number one. But number two, if they're making money, they always want to go back to the same well. So it's like for them, it's not like, well, let me invest it. Well, now it probably is. But several years ago, it was like, well, yeah, I heard that my buddy invested in movies, so now let me try investing in movies. There are some of those investors that are still around, but again, they're very skeptical and they're very jaded. But at the end of the day, they all have the same objective. If they're making money, they want to keep repeating it. They want to just keep, repeat business. They all want to keep just going back to the same well, and they want to keep, making money. If everybody's making money, why would anybody want to stop? Why would anybody want to either interrupt or stop that?
They wouldn't.
So, and that's the problem with a lot of people in Hollywood. A lot of people in Hollywood are like, oh, I just want to get this movie done. But they're not thinking to themselves, well, if that investor ends up losing money, guess what? You're probably not going to be making another movie for a long, long time. And I've come across so many people like that, endless amounts of people in the industry. All they care about is the bottom dollar. All they care about, and again, I know I sound like a broken record in saying this, but it's just I have to emphasize this, is that just know who you're getting involved with. Because a lot of people in Hollywood, they're not interested in making movies. They're interested in getting paid. And if they know that you have access to a high net worth, a rich uncle or somebody, they're going to want to tell you everything that you want to hear. Oh, I can bring you distribution. I know this salesman. I know that movie star. I know this movie star. Just let it go in one ear and out the other. Get to know that person and really find out what is their objective. If their objective is only to make money and get paid, drop them like a hot potato and move on to someone who actually is interested in being in business with you, is looking at the long term, looking at longevity, and really just looking at creating, great entertainment for worldwide markets, but also interested in making money.
True.
Indeed. Now, there's been a lot of discussion of late regarding certain copyrights of software and various of properties. The latest being the whole MOVA debacle, that's in the news. We've reported on it a couple times in the past months, so our listeners are familiar with it. How is that affecting financing from where you stand? How does it affect the market?
And I'm sorry, when you said the whole, which scandal?
Mova.
Man created some software on his own. He was in partnership with another, with a friend of his. They split up. The friend took the software, sold it to a Chinese company. Chinese company sold it to studios over here. And the guy who created the software is saying, well, that was pirated from me. I own the rights to the software. Nobody else does. Everybody's been using the software to make their movies has to pay me, or they have to stop, making the movies.
And on the other side, he's saying it was a work for hire. They were using his equipment at the time, so he had every right to sell it to China, who sold it to the studios. And why are you bitching?
Very simply, very simply, know who you're getting involved with.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. And it's just very common. It's just very common. Go out to dinner with them, get them drunk, do this, really get to know those. And it's really the reality. I mean, I've been, in the midnight hours, just drinking and just having a good time, with investors, and you get to know them. You really get to know, what their objectives are. And a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to just hang out and have a good time and befriend investors or befriend people. They just want to get right to the nitty gritty. But basically answering your question is, yeah, just get to know, obviously, the people that you're getting into business with. But from a finance perspective, it's pretty, it's standard due diligence, like in anything. It's pretty much just finding out clear chain of title. So if somebody's coming to us in terms of an IP or a certain patent or technology or contract or something or software, it's always just in terms of doing your homework. From a financier's perspective, is just making sure that the asset essentially is clean. So, if we're talking about an intellectual property, i.e. a script, that there's, clean chain of title on it. I mean, that's standard due diligence in any regard. In just touching on your specific example in regards to that case, I would say is that what that individual should have done is really surround himself either by, with either a very good attorney or a very good advisor. My preference would obviously be a very good attorney, and really just doing his homework in terms of just making that the contracts were airtight. I mean, that's the thing with me. I mean, for me and Odette, I've often said this to you. You know this about me, is
yes,
I'm not a lawyer in any regard. I'm not. But I know a heck of a lot in terms of the legalities, the legal world, contract drafting. I don't want to necessarily use the word suffer, but for lack of a better word, let's use it. I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, so I have OCD. But in regards to me having that OCD as it applies to, for example, contracts and negotiations, I think it's a phenomenal tool to have. so it's like for me, I'm not an attorney. I don't know the various laws and anything like that, but I know how to negotiate. I know how to draft contracts. I know the various clauses that should be in any sort of contract. And so much so where, believe it or not, I've worked with some pretty prestigious law firms, and they send me over contracts and I'm amending them. And I'm like, I just can't believe that they would have that in there, or they would have this. So you really should make that effort to really just educate yourself in terms of, the various copyright laws, making sure that, if someone is going to try to circumvent you, or if someone is going to try to, for example, use your software, if that software was developed and you sold it to, let's say, a Chinese company, just using that as an example, and you enter into a contract with them, well, educate yourself to know, listen, there should be a clause in that contract that applies to, if that Chinese company that I'm selling that software to goes out and sells it to a Dubai company or a Canadian company, that essentially that protection applies to each one of those jurisdictions. Now, of course, in terms of getting to that specific legal structure is another conversation, but you should always just try to make sure, really put in that extra effort to either educate yourself and surround yourself by good people, to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen. But from a financing perspective, if somebody came to us with a specific a specific copyrighted IP or copyrights of a software, and there's various owners of that property, we're gonna completely rip that to shreds and really make sure that there's a clean chain of title, because we don't want any problems in terms of any lawsuits or somebody coming after us. So you would absolutely be amazed in terms of the amount of due diligence that goes into a clean chain of title. Getting a third-party opinion from an evaluation firm, getting a third-party approval, i.e. from a law firm, in terms of getting their thoughts on it that a financier would want, either they pay or maybe they have on retainer or standing by. You'd be amazed from a financial perspective, what the amount of time and resources and due diligence that goes into making sure that there's a clean chain of title before a financier touches anything like that.
That makes a lot of sense, because also, it's for the knowing that if the software is also proprietary, and like in this particular case, it's going to be going on for years. This is going to be the blurred lines case of software. I have a feeling.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's like, honestly, because it's like, who knows? Was it a work for hire? Was it actually his independent stuff? Will it because it's all affecting.
But again, if it was a work for hire,
yeah.
But if it was a work for hire, again, what kind of contract did he have? Did he have a work for hire contract? What was really stated in that contract?
Yeah.
If it was only a work for hire contract and there wasn't anything stated in there in terms of saying, well, you can only use essentially, my work to the extent of X, or to the extent that in this country or under this jurisdiction, or whatever the case may be, if nothing specific was really outlined in that contract, then essentially, I'm sorry to say, but it is at that point there, it's a free for all in terms of that company could do what they want. I mean, does that individual who was brought in as a work for hire, does he have any recourse? Of course he does, or of course she does, whoever it is, male or female. But of course they have recourse, but it always goes back to that contract. Basically, let me use this analogy. If somebody was hired as a ghostwriter, okay, and that ghostwriter, and again, the term ghostwriter, we all know what that means, right? So if you're being hired as a ghostwriter, you're being hired specifically to write material, no credit, no acknowledgement of anything. It's like a ghostwriter being brought in to write memoirs. You're not going to get credit. Nobody's going to know about it, this, that, and the other. So it's like that ghostwriter coming out and saying, well, that book that I wrote 75% of or 100% of, has grossed $200 million. So now that I want it, now I want a piece of it. Well, no, really you can't. And even if you thought you could, let's go back to your original contract. Your original contract clearly states you are a ghost writer. So it's I'm not blaming this individual. I'm not blaming him by any means. He absolutely is justified in terms of his response. But what was really outlined in that work for hire? If he had certain things outlined that restricted any buyers, then I would say that's immediate grounds for any type of justified recourse, and for him to obviously pursue essentially what belongs to him, which I'm assuming he's looking at obviously. He's looking at obviously some sort of financial settlement, but really just in that regard for a work for hire, it really just depends in terms of what that contract said. So I'm going to assume that, let's just say that there's certain things that wasn't disclosed. And you really just have to look at both sides. You know, he or she really should put in that extra effort to make sure that certain things are mentioned in there, even if it's a work for hire, even if it's just someone saying, you know, I'm only going to be hiring you for, 30 days to do this. You should really have that in there. Just put in that extra effort to say, okay, right, you are hiring me for 30 days, but just put that clause in there. Put that clause in there that clearly states that you can only use my work to the extent of this, to the extent of that. You can't do this, you can't do that. I give you the approval to do this, but I don't give you the approval to do that. You should really just clearly outline all of it. Whether you think it's relevant or not, outline it.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, then you don't have these arguments.
Yeah, and just touching in terms of just another example is that in regards to we touched on ghostwriting, but even like other people that just hire writers. Now I mean writers are wanting more more of a more respect. I mean very much like a lot of these actresses, a lot of these female stars that have been coming out now. A lot more people want more respect and acknowledgement. Well, the same thing goes for writers. I mean I've come across so many writers now where they want to be hired, and in their contract, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people run stuff past. Mike, can you read my contract? Can you read this? Can you give me advice on that? And so you'd be surprised how many times my phone rings just to, for people just, wanting my advice. And just touching on writers for a moment, it's the same thing. It's like, people now will hire writers or will want to hire writers. And in that contract, it'll simply say, let's just use the fact that it's either a movie or a TV show. Okay, so I'm going to be paying you X amount of dollars as an upfront fee. So you either get, you get half now and then half on delivery. Let's just say, using that as an example. And let's say it's a movie. There's no indication in that contract from that producer or production company that it says anything about a credit or a back-end deal. Now, if that writer was naive, really naive enough, they would say, oh, great, I'm getting this pile of money up front. That's great. That's fantastic. They wouldn't know anything about a back end. They wouldn't know what a back end is. They wouldn't know how a back end should be structured. And let's say that movie goes and grosses $100 million. And that person only got paid $10,000. Mm-hmm. Make that extra effort to educate yourself. And I've actually ran into that situation very recently with a business partner of mine, which, obviously that's what happened, is that people underestimate how intelligent other people are. That's why a lot of people need agents. But really, to be quite honest, if you just apply yourself and educate yourself, believe me, you'd be in many regards, you can be a lot better of a negotiator and really, really catch on things than just leaving it to your investment advisor or leaving it to your agent or to your manager.
Absolutely. And now shifting a little bit though of the gear, because as of lately, a lot of stories, we're also talking about television a little while back too. And talking that we're going back kind of to the TGIF concept, more family-oriented things that are considered, they're opening to and having a resurgence. Places like Netflix and all of that, they have Fuller House, they have redo of Gilmore Girls, all of those things. The continuation stories and stuff like that. Do you think that we've actually turned a corner then in the industry? Or by finally getting at least television into a more intellectual level? And what about in terms of the film industry? Are we finally starting to wake up and smell the coffee of intellectual things, and that things are in the film world without remakes being a factor?
I mean, there's a lot in that question, but I would say that
I know I pack a question.
No, so I would say that there's listen, there's certain content that's meant for television, and there's certain content that's meant for film. But in that sense, what you think may be perfect for a movie on the big screen might be just as good, if not, even more superior on television. Remember, there's pros and cons to both. So on TV, one of the things that I absolutely love about TV is that you expand your canvas, like really expand it in terms of the story. You know, in a movie, you really only have, 90 minutes, 90 to 120 minutes, unless it's
Yes.
really, very engaging. But I would say probably 90 minutes, 90 to 100 minutes, where you really have your audience's attention. Obviously, you can stretch it out to, like I said, to about 120 minutes. But that's when that's really your window in terms of how in terms of the attention that you have from your audience. So you really have to get to the points very quickly and really have them be meaningful. If it's a horror movie, get to the scares and get into the story and the characters and have there be as many scares as possible. In television, and this is one of the things I love about TV, is that if it's structured correctly, the story can go on. You can just tell this phenomenal story over how many different episodes, how many different seasons, and you have such a larger canvas to work with that's far beyond 90, 100, 120 minutes. And you can just create a much more engaging experience in terms of telling a greater story. I mean, one of my absolute favorite TV shows, and I don't watch TV, but there's one TV show that I'm absolutely addicted to, and I highly encourage everyone to check it out, is Ray Donovan with Liev Schreiber. I mean, that is just such a phenomenal show. In every regard, the characters are just so rich, and I remember the first time that I came across that show, I wasn't even looking for it. I think it was like episode 1 of season 1, and I think they made everyone watch the first episode for free. I think it was, and I think I watched it online because they were just trying to drive in that audience, right? So they offered the first episode for free, and anybody can watch it, can stream it and watch it if you're watching it online. And I was totally engaged, like immediately immersed, because you're like, okay, well, he's got tension with his father here, and what's going on in the past, and what happened to him, why do they hate each other, blah blah blah, and it just brought you in. And now, I mean, I just came across an article the other day. Ray Donovan is now being renewed for a 6th season, and there were talks,
I'm excited about,
and I'm totally pumped up about it. Totally pumped up. And they were like, just looking at it, and when they were in season 2, 3, and 4, and well, we're probably not going to make it to another season. There's not really an audience in there, but there's a huge audience. People absolutely love the show, and they love the show because of the characters. And it's the same thing with like Fuller House. I mean, the reason why Fuller House why Netflix picked it up was not because of the stories. It was because of those characters. It was because of those people portraying those characters. So you just have such a larger canvas to work with in television, where you can really just tell a much more engaging story. I mean, there's another TV show that's just that Ray Donovan is number 1, but also The Brave with Mike Vogel and Anne Hesh. I mean, that is just a remarkable series. So far, the characters are engaging. There's mystery, there's suspense, there's tension. Could that work as a movie? Sure, it can. But you would never be able to really dive into Anne Heche's character the way that we're diving into her now. We know that she lost her son, and we know that there's a backstory there. I have a feeling that that's probably going to, come to light sooner or later, where obviously, they're going to dive deeper into that. And you don't have that time. You don't have the luxury of that kind of time in a motion picture. So in a motion picture, right now, nowadays, it's really perfect for the Marvel type movies, which I don't have a problem with. I love all those Marvel movies, Captain America being my favorite, but we're starting to see that transition where a lot of stories that could be told on film, or that we think that could be told on the big screen, are now being told on television, and that's not necessarily a negative.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And we're also getting, but TV's also becoming such a rich medium of also intellectual stories like This Is Us. Things. It's like
or a story that a series that has started to kind of grab me, because obviously it's very near and dear to my heart. People that people that suffer from autism and various disabilities. Anybody who knows me knows that I have just a massive amount of love for people who need massive amounts of love, and it really just hurts my heart when I see those those type of people dealing with what they're dealing with. But it's so socially relevant that they go out and they make a series called The Good Doctor, which I don't know if you guys have checked out. Which I don't know if you guys have checked out. And my family has been into it heavily, a lot more than I have. But now that I've started to get into it, and because it's a subject matter that's very near and dear to my heart, and you're just immediately immersed in that.
Yes.
I don't know if you can have that same. I'm pretty sure you could. I'm pretty sure listen. You have movies like Rain Man. You have other movies that have touched on very similar subject matters. But again, I think that the medium of television on taking something like Rain Man and obviously something like The Good Doctor, which both obviously touch on an individual with autism. You can explore so much over every single week. And that your audience, if it's good enough, which obviously The Good Doctor is, Ray Donovan is, The Brave is, your audience is gonna tune in every single week, as opposed to just pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars in P&A and marketing to drive butts to the theaters. People may not want to do that, but guess what? People come home from work and they just want to sit on the couch and they want to enjoy good entertainment, and that's what Ray Donovan is. That's what The Brave is. That's what The Good Doctor is. Because what they do is they have I don't want to say unlimited canvas, but in a sense it kind of is, because it's so vast where they can explore not only a story, not only the narrative, but they can explore so many different characters. Like in Ray Donovan, Odette, you've noticed, like in Ray Donovan, for me, it's like you have so many different characters, so many different like subplots that are going on, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? Why is this person meeting this person? And isn't this just really about the Donovan family? And then at the end of that episode, it all links in, right? I don't believe that you could tell the story of the Donovans to the extent that it's been told so far in a movie.
Not yet.
Exactly. So really, we live in a day and age, very simply, where television is a phenomenal medium. I mean, this sci-fi series that I'm doing right now, could it work as a major motion picture, or could it work as like a trilogy or a franchise? Absolutely, for sure. There's no question about it. So, but again, the opportunity, because now in terms of what's available in terms of visual effects, and in terms of the appetite of audiences, there is just much more. There's much more interest. People are much more tuned in terms of on what's television, in terms of what's on television. So much so that mostly in America, I mean, in Canada, they don't really say it, but in the U.S., that's why everybody in the U.S., or a large majority of Americans, say, well, it's Netflix night. Well, why do you think it's Netflix night, as opposed to saying that it's movie night? Let's go to the nearest theater and check out what's at the theater, because there's more engrossing entertainment on Netflix, on TV, than there really is at the theater. If you want to go see like an Alien Covenant or a Marvel movie, absolutely go to the movies. But there's more of a diversity. There's more variety on TV nowadays, especially like on Netflix and Amazon, specifically Netflix.
Yeah, it is much wider of an industry.
For sure.
And it's like, I'd absolutely say that then that leads to the question of that, what kind of topics and mediums are you looking to explore next?
What kind of topics? On film, television, or pretty much anything?
Both.
Well, one particular subject matter, and I'm doing this in this sci-fi TV series, and even in the films that I'm doing. I really have a very keen interest in exploring the notion of love
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of the subjects. I think that like this sci-fi television series that I'm doing, it's essentially at the heart of it is this love story between two people that are really destined to be with each other. And I just feel that the power of love. I mean, just it's you have people like Jim Cameron that have explored it in Avatar, and that's one of the reasons why obviously it was so successful, is because people wanted Jake and Natiri to end up together. But that's a particular topic that I'm very interested in further exploring in all of my projects is love. And just creating very rich characters, like, again, just touching on Ray Donovan. I mean, the last season, you've seen the last season, right? So
yeah,
and I'm pretty sure most of our viewers either have seen it or they've heard about it, so I'm not spoiling anything. But that's the whole thing with Ray and his wife. So when he lost her, it's the power of love, beyond devastating, the power of love.
Yeah.
And now what everybody's been saying, and now obviously what I believe, is that in season 6, you're really going to see that love completely and utterly eat away at him, like right to the bone.
Yeah.
It's just going to completely and utterly eat away at him. And I just think it's a fascinating subject. And I think that a lot of people have explored it for sure, but there's also parts of love that haven't been explored in terms of, in terms of, the pros and cons with it, trust, respect, cherishing it, doing whatever it takes to make it last. Hence, obviously, why Titanic was a huge hit, is because of that very thing. They wanted these two people. They absolutely were begging, pleading, for, no, please let them make it out. Let them survive. They deserve to love each other for the rest of their lives. And sometimes, love succeeds and sometimes love fails, but it's the power of love that everybody is fascinated with. And I think in terms of what I'm doing, in terms of exploring it, I'm incorporating that power of love into, action related settings, in terms of apocalyptic settings like this sci-fi series that I'm doing, in terms of fantasy, otherworldly, in terms of what's out there in the universe, just touching on that once again on that sci-fi TV series that I'm doing. So it's really, I'm just blending the power of love as it applies to different themes, different thematic elements that I'm using in conjunction with the power of love to really just tell a very good story.
Very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and more powers of love will be definitely an interesting.
We need more love. We need more
Yes.
love. We need more love on this. In
True.
the world, Odette, we need more love, and the power of love it always prevails. It's just, and listen, there's been times where you kind of, and even myself, you kind of find yourself questioning it, but love always prevails, and we need more of that now more than ever in this world.
Yep, that and positivity.
Absolutely.
So, getting back to films, do you feel films are having to expand beyond themselves and multi-platforms in order to be viable? I mean, are films with a cause becoming a new venture? And how do you feel people can tap into those markets?
Well, I think, just touching on your first question, I think that we're currently living in a day and age right now where we're living in a multi-platform day and age right now. So films and television shows, music videos, commercials, advertisements, all of that has in some way gone multi-platform. To what extent is obviously the big question mark. I don't think that it's gone as far as we could take it. I think there's definitely the intention is definitely there for sure to really, obviously, really stretch it out and really, completely explore all of its potential. So in terms of films having to expand beyond itself and go multi-platform in order to be viable, 1,000% agree with that. And I think it's already been done and it's currently being done. But there's still that notion, there's that perspective that still exists where people are thinking that well, how much money can we make off of it? Is it really something viable? Is it really something that is incredibly lucrative? And I definitely, absolutely think it is. I think it's more lucrative in certain parts of the world than it is in others. Definitely, Asia is probably number one on the list. They are just completely, just fully interactive with their mobile devices, specifically their phones. They're watching things on it. I mean, even like, I don't know if you guys are aware, but even I think I read an article, I think it was like last year or a few months ago, I believe it was, where a film or a short like episodic series was produced just for Snapchat.
Nice.
It was the whole thing. And I think it was made in Asia. I think it was. I might be mistaken on that, but the whole thing was made just for Snapchat. It was financed independently, and it was distributed only on Snapchat. And the amount of people that tuned into that series, watched it on their phones, watched it on their iPads, it was immense. It was absolutely incredible. So you definitely have a market for that. But again, we have to continue to build on that. We have to continue to, obviously, in conjunction with, a lot of the mobile carriers now. I mean, a lot of them now, you're starting to see, obviously, a transition there where, carriers like Verizon, certain Canadian carriers, they're not as competitive as the American carriers, but you take a company like Verizon, where they're offering more on their data packages, 4G LTE, I mean, even in certain spots where you wouldn't think that you would be able to pick up a signal. And the reason for that is because they want to be able to offer more customers that flexibility. But it's not just that flexibility. It's because that the demand is in where people want to stream more content on their devices. They want to be able to watch. Yeah. They want to be able to go on Netflix and watch the next episode of Fuller House on their phones. They want to be able to watch that next movie from Netflix on their phones, or on Hulu, or on Amazon. And it's the same thing, like even on on a variety of different platforms. So to answer that part of the question, absolutely. And then your second question, I mean, films, becoming like a new venture, and how people can tap into those markets. It's all about, in terms of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a new venture. I would say probably you're definitely expanding onto something that is still fairly new and fresh. But in terms of how to tap into those markets, it's all about just obviously teaming up with the right kind of, distributors, the right partners, really educating yourself. I know I keep emphasizing that, but it's really about educating yourself. I mean, this whole film that was released on Snapchat, that was all entirely just by risk. I mean, they just took a huge risk on just distributing it just on Snapchat. I mean, many years ago, there was that other series, the BMW series with Clive Owen. I don't know if you guys ever checked those out. I love those shows. Those were short action films, and those were only distributed like online, like on YouTube. And so even back then, many years ago, they were even just exploring that, that medium there, and in terms of going multi-platform. The studios are behind though. The studios still, they have that perspective where they just don't believe it. They really don't believe it, and they're really losing out on millions and multi-millions of dollars. They're absolutely losing out on, essentially, for lack of a better word, call it free money. Because it's really just about plugging and playing at that point. There, you're literally just tapping in to those markets. So just further answering that part of the question, it's not so much in terms of tapping into those markets. I would say it's really more about plugging into those markets, because everything is there. You can easily plug into Snapchat. You can easily plug into, YouTube. I mean, this whole thing right now, I mean, we've got a live stream on YouTube here. So, I mean, it's like, it's just a matter of, it's not necessarily tapping in. You're just plugging in. All the technology is already there. That technology obviously is getting a lot better as each day passes, and we're making a lot of advancements. So I would say it's really just about doing your homework, being very strategic in terms of, what kind of story you want to tell, what market do you want to reach, and really being very strategic about that, and then plugging in to those markets.
Mm-hmm. And understanding what those markets have to offer for you.
Exactly.
And also, let's forget, that you and I have talked about war stories. That was another thing that we talked about even on our first time.
Oh boy, here we go. Here's the big one.
So basically, it's like we've talked about that, and it's like, people who are the wannabes of money and all of that. It's like, and separating out the legitimate investors from the wannabes, the legit filmmaker from the wannabe. So what are some of those pitfalls that we fall into? And let's go over those war stories.
Yeah, well.
What does a person spot a legitimate investor or a wannabe?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say, and I've said this before, so we'll just touch on it again. Don't waste any time. Just don't waste your time or anybody else's time for that matter. Don't be arrogant. Don't be ignorant. Don't be naive. Be honest. Be direct. Be honest, because a lot of the war. Let's leave out the word stories. A lot of the wars that I've been in stem from all of that. People just being dishonest, people that are just being arrogant, people whose only objective is to waste time. They posture. They're very passive. Odette, you and I have worked together in some cases, but we don't necessarily work full time together. And if we did, you would be able to quickly see that I'm not the easiest person to do business with, and I will be the first one. I'm very transparent, and that's what a lot of people love about me, because when you work with me, there is absolutely no BS. Absolutely not. And if there is BS, someone's going to get ripped a new one. And that's just the way that it is. Because my only objective is to close deals and make money. And especially, and essentially spread that happiness. So a lot of the wars that I've been involved in really just stem from people being ignorant, being arrogant, wasting time, either have a God complex or a superiority complex. So it goes back to what I've said. So it goes back to what I've said earlier. Once again, just know who you're getting involved with, before you actually get involved with them. And then let's obviously transition from that point into the next phase. Let's say, you do get to know people, everybody's good to go. You have a great team. Everything looks good, sounds good, feels good. We're ready to go. Then I would say that my advice to our viewers is be open-minded, just be honest. Be open-minded, but don't make the mistakes that I've made very early on in my career, which is not drawing the line. Be open and honest, be collaborative, but draw the line up front and don't give up any control whatsoever. So if you're but I'm not saying be arrogant about it or be ignorant about it. I'm not saying that at all. You have to be collaborative, but you have to draw the line, because like I said earlier on in the show, is there has to be one decision maker. I've even recently I've experienced where You want to be collaborative, and I'm a very, very collaborative person. Very collaborative, but sometimes that could really work against you, because if people know that you're too collaborative, you know, they use that against you, and definitely people have used that against me. And again, you learn from it. So be collaborative, be open-minded, be honest, but draw the line up front and say, listen, this is as far as I'm willing to go, but beyond that, don't even bother asking me. Don't even waste my time. Don't even waste your breath even broaching the subject. I'm willing to go this far. You make that you acknowledge that up front. You make that very clear up front, and say, this is the amount of control that I'm willing to give up. This is what I'm not willing to give up. I'm bringing X amount of dollars versus what I'm hiring you for. And that's the other thing in terms of being transparent and honest. You know, what do you want to, what is your objective? What do you want to achieve? Are you hiring this person to do X? If so, that person needs to know, this is what I'm hiring you to do. Anything else is above your pay grade, and you and I just don't discuss that. If it's something that I'm hiring you for, then you and I can converse about that. That's no problem. But if I'm hiring a writer to write something, I'm not discussing production with that writer. If I'm hiring a producer to do something, I'm not discussing financing in terms of like the mechanisms of financing. Obviously, the producer is going to want to know, are we on time? Are we on budget? If we have a gap, is money going to come in? Is our loan going to close? Blah, blah, blah. There's certain, again, to the extent, but draw that line. If that producer wants to say, well, Mike, I want to come with you to the investor meetings. No, there's no reason. That's above your pay grade. If the director says, you know, I want to be involved in structuring the finance, no, that's above your pay grade. That's not what I'm hiring you for. So you want to be very, very clear in terms of, you know, what is the objective, but be collaborative. But by being collaborative, draw the line up front. And like I said, there can only be one final decision maker. That's really been the crux of a lot of my wars, is by being too collaborative, you want to get everybody involved, but then it ultimately works against you. So, you know, and then you quickly realize, like I did, where if it was one decision maker, we wouldn't, you know, be in the situation that we're in, and everybody's wasting time and working against each other. The same example that I can give with like as it applies to like a board of directors, it's the same thing. If anybody knows anything about a board of directors, it's the same analogy. With a board of directors, you have one chairman of the board or one chairwoman of the board, but that one person, there's only one chair of the board. Now that chairman or that chairwoman, obviously that can change from time to time. You know, if the rest of the board is not happy with the way that person is conducting themselves, or is doing what's in the best interest of the company, then obviously that position does change. But ultimately, you have a board of directors of several people, and they all work together. You know, as a unified team in terms of what is the best interest of the venture, what is the best interest of the company, and what is in the best interest of everybody. But ultimately, there is one person, one chairman or one chairwoman of that board. And it's the same thing here. When you're producing a movie, if you're the producer, and you want to hire out, you know, you want to hire two other producers or one other producers to come in and work with you, but you are the producer and you are bringing in 100% of the financing, guess what? You are in control. You are that final decision maker. And listen, I'll be the first one to say, I'm not an experienced producer. I'm an experienced financier. That's what I know. That's what I love. Do I know things about producing? Absolutely. Have I produced all these movies and television shows and I know things about, you know, productions? Absolutely not. But if I'm the one that's coming in with the financing, which is essentially what I do, and I also get involved in as executive producing and producing, then I ultimately, that final decision rests with me. I'm going to rely on the other producers that I'm hiring, but ultimately, if somebody comes to me and says, "Listen, if there's a situation, if I hire two other producers and I basically say, hey, listen, you know, I'm hiring you to deliver the movie. I'm involved as a producer as well, but I'm mostly on the financing because I'm bringing 100% of the financing. I'm relying on those one or two other producers to produce the movie, deliver it on time and on budget. If there's a problem with the production and we've gone over budget, hey, Mike, you know, we need another, you know, $500,000, you know, can we get that? Well,
there's ultimately one person, just like a studio, that has to make that decision. And if I'm the only one that's bringing in the financing, guess what? That decision, that only decision, rests with me. And it's the same thing that it would apply to anybody else.
And also, you have to make sure, as a filmmaker, you don't do that whole, I need an extra $500,000, because what a horrible way to start a relationship.
Of course. And that goes back to obviously spotting whether you're with a legitimate investor over a wannabe. So, I mean, and that's the that's the other part of your question. So, I mean, listen, a lot of investors are legitimate. Most of people in Hollywood, they think that most investors are idiots, like I've said, and they think that they're not legitimate. I mean, that's just a mindset. They're wrong. Are there investors out there that I would not necessarily use the word wannabes? I wouldn't use that word. I would say that a lot of investors are they like the idea of investing in movies, and that's pretty much all they're interested in. But it doesn't apply for all of them. They're certainly not wannabes. There a lot of investors, especially in today's day and age, you have to understand, you have to be patient. If you don't have any patience, don't ignore everything that I've said for the last hour or so. So if you don't have any patience, just completely ignore what I've been saying. You have to have some patience, actually a lot of patience dealing with investors, because they're not wannabes. They're not really passive. They're not really posturing. They're nervous. And you know what? If I was a high net worth and I had $1 gazillion that I was sitting on, I would be nervous too. You know, I mean, am I really going to get my money back? Are you really going to, give me what are you really going to be able to return my money plus, whatever profit I'm going to be making at the end, at the end of it all.
Yep.
So the best way to really spot whether an investor is serious or not, being serious and being legitimate are two different things. An investor could be very legitimate and they could say, hey, listen, I really want to invest in this movie, so on and so forth. And they end up, obviously not committing right away. Then let's say a week or 2 weeks go by. And they come back and they say, you know what? I come from real estate. I just found another property that I can fix and flip in 30 days, and I can easily just cash out and make an easy profit there. And it's something that I've done. It's something that, I know it very well, and I'd rather continue to do that. Does that make them illegitimate? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make them. It doesn't make them a wannabe. It doesn't make them, it doesn't make them a fraud or anything like that. It's just the fact that they're not serious. So it's really about spotting whether an investor is serious versus being not serious. And the best, and there's numerous ways to spot that, but one of the best, well, there's probably one or two ways to easily spot that. Number one, spend a lot of time with them. Spend a lot of time with them. Go out, if they like to, go out to, good restaurants, nightclubs, events, concerts, family events, coffee shops, whatever. Just get to know them. Go out, get to know them, get to know what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't like, what they like to laugh at, what they don't like to laugh at, how serious they are, what their sense of humor is versus how serious they are. Really get to know them. Get to know their likes, their dislikes. And then number two is once that foundation is made and there's a friendship there, because like I've always said in my previous interviews, the relationship between an investor and an investee is one of friendship. You want to be friends. You're both in there to make money together. You're both in there to have a great time. One of the reasons why investors want to invest in movies is they're not looking at it because of the rate of return. And that's the common misconception, especially from a lot of these, I'm sorry to say, I have to be blunt, from a lot of these idiots in Hollywood, is that a lot of these idiots in the industry, they go around and they try to sell and say, oh yeah, so and so's going to be in the movie, you have a great time and blah 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 and so on and so forth, and we're going to get you 150% return on your money. And it has nothing to do with that. An investor really just wants to come in. He or she wants to be able to trust you with their money, trust that you're going to deliver on what you say, and they want to have a good time. Because an investor, especially the ones that the plethora of investors that I've met, they can all make their money. in
Yes.
in a billion different ways. And that's what a lot of people in Hollywood don't understand. They just don't get it. These investors, they don't need Hollywood. They don't need movies in order to generate money. They don't need it. They want it. They want it because they want to have a good time, because they want to be on set and take pictures and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that they're going to neglect their money. That doesn't mean that you can just get them drunk and they're going to completely forget about their money and their investment. That it doesn't work like that. Investors today are extremely sophisticated, incredibly intellectual, and you have to be able to know them. You have to be able to know them on a personal level, and that's how you're going to be able to spot whether they're serious or whether they're not.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to switch to a very controversial thing, because we all know in the light of today with Hollywood, it's like what's going on, and I guess that we would have to be blind, so to speak, not to notice what is going on in there. So in your opinion, what's the best way do you think that it is to clean up our industry in light of recent events?
Honesty, transparency. It's very simple. A lot of people they make it so difficult to understand. What is honesty? What is transparency? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. It's very simple. Just be honest. Just be transparent. And that's my motto. For me, that's my motto in my personal life and even in my professional life. And I tell everybody that, whether it be in like I said, in my personal life or my professional life, just be honest. Just be transparent. Whether it be good or bad, just tell me the truth. And some people they don't understand that. They think, oh no, the best way is for me to hide everything, and then when Mike finds out, he's going to obviously blow up. Well, what should I do? Should I just have a smile on my face and lay on the floor and kick my feet up in the air and start dancing like a little girl? So it's like, so for me, it's just, be honest. Just be honest and be transparent. So that's probably the best way to clean up the industry. And listen, you have so many stories. Look at Relativity, for example, and I don't want to say anything that can obviously be used against me, but you have, companies like Relativity where they weren't honest. They weren't transparent to their, to their shareholders. They weren't, honest and transparent to their, to their investors. And look what ended up happening. Same thing with, same thing with Sony. That's why those investors started backing out. Same thing with Weinstein. Well, Weinstein is, that company there is obviously to the extreme in many other ways. But again, it's still, it all goes back. You're not honest. You're not transparent. He wasn't, he wasn't honest with himself. He wasn't honest with people around him. And look what happened. So the best way to really clean up the industry in light of all the recent events, obviously in terms of what's happened with, this whole thing with, with the Weinstein Company, it's really just, it's tragic and no words can describe, no words can describe it. No words can describe what I feel. I just, obviously a lot of those stars are probably not paying attention to this show right now, but obviously a lot of women probably are tuned in. But, I just want to say that, there are people out there in the world that, love women. I'm one of them that respect women. I'm one of them. And I love everybody and I respect everybody. And not everybody is bad. Not every, it's a message to women as well. Not every man is bad. And there are good guys out there. And like I said, I'm one of them. And, there's so many, like-minded people like me out there. So, it's just a shame that certain individuals have to act the way that they act. But that's why that's why in light of these recent events, there's going to be a very serious shift in the industry, and that shift is going to result in a lot more cleanups. Let's just say that, Odette, for lack of a better word, a lot more cleanups, because the cleaning up is far from done. I think I'm pretty spot on about that. That the cleanup is far from done. But just to simply answer your question, honesty and transparency is the best way to clean up. Is the best way to clean up the industry.
And exposing those who, for the longest time, have had this.
Absolutely.
These issues.
Of course. And that's a form of, obviously, honesty and transparency. Yes. So, absolutely.
And despite what Keith Gifford said, the best answer is not kill all the lawyers.
What was that?
King Henry IV allegedly asked how to improve the society in his kingdom. He said, first kill all the lawyers. I don't think that's the
answer either, my friend. I don't think that's the answer either. And people need to be held accountable. People need to obviously admit their mistakes. And listen, is it difficult to admit your mistakes? Of course it is. I mean, I've made so many mistakes, and I've admitted so many of my mistakes, and it is difficult to admit. But you have to ask yourself, by not admitting my mistakes, what am I actually doing? Am I actually causing more harm than good? Of course you are. You're actually causing way more harm than good. So just, be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Be honest with everyone around you. But the thing that really just hurts the most in terms of these recent events, and listen, I totally get it. Like I have a very hard line when it comes to this particular subject matter with all these victims coming out recently. But the thing that I don't understand in terms of again, that honesty and that transparency, it's not just for the people that inflict the pain, but it's also the victims that receive that unfortunate pain. They should be honest and transparent, and they should not hide anything. And that's just something that I just that really hurts my heart, because they should actually, and that's why I have so much love and respect for people like Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan who really came out and they were the first to obviously, admit what had happened, but it should have been done way before. I mean, there's nobody that should be afraid of anybody else, especially, this one individual that everybody is afraid of. Why they're afraid of him, I have no idea. I mean, it just makes me laugh. But I mean, to be that afraid of someone that inflicts the amount of pain that individual has inflicted on you, and for you not to be honest and transparent, I don't know what there is to be so afraid of. But that's just my honest opinion. And listen, I get it. The fact that they were trying to protect themselves and their families and their careers, I totally get it. But that level of pain should not be hidden. That level of pain you should not be tucking under the rug. You should be honest and transparent and very open about it. Because I believe just to add to that, just one quick footnote, because I believe is that
go for it.
When somebody does wrong, when people do wrong, they need to know that they do wrong. And if you let them get away with it for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, they're not going to learn it on their own. I mean, look what happened here. If Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan and everybody else didn't come out, that would have continued. That would have kept that. He would have never come out on his own free will and said, here's who I am, and this is what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years. He would have never done that. Nobody does that. So because they don't want to acknowledge the reality, and they don't want to acknowledge the realistic effects of their actions. So So in terms of the individuals that are inflicting this pain, they obviously have to be open and honest and stop what they're doing. But also, the unfortunate victims, they should not be tucking anything under the rug. They should not be hiding anything. When somebody does wrong, they need to know that they do wrong, and they need to know immediately up front.
Yep, and
that's exactly what's going to happen now. That's exactly what's going to happen now, because I could assure you this: if any of this type of behavior is repeated, you know, in terms of, you know, what, these type of, incidences. And it happens a year from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now, 75 years from now. I can guarantee you that there's going to be nobody that's going to be sliding it under the rug, because, you know, now everybody's going to be looking out for each other. Women are going to be looking out for each other, and it brings joy to my heart to hear that. So, because everybody should be looking out for everybody else, and I just don't see this type of behavior being repeated, because I don't think anybody's going to stand for it anymore.
Our power did not.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can. I am so sorry about that. We had a little mini power break.
No problem.
This is what happens when you're in a scary cabin in the woods.
At least it wasn't while I was in the middle of talking.
Yes, correct. It's like it was a scary power or cabin in the woods moment.
Not a problem.
And we are back. So that being said, it's like also people like Corey Feldman, people like that in the industry who are starting to try and speak out against it. It's actually a really positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's great that this whole shift is really taking place.
Absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the shakeup is.
You and me and everybody else.
Yes. Also, it's like another thing that's happening is in the socio-political field, as we know, that tax incentives are being given, taken away. They're trying to defund art, refund art, all of that stuff. So with all those political changes too, it's making it an unfriendly, like representatives and stuff like that too, that What opportunities do you think is going to give rise to that?
In terms of what specifically?
Yeah, in terms of incentives or new ways of dealing with finance, because if tax incentives and things like that are taken away because of federal budgets, etc., or national endowments for the arts, etc.
Well, I think that if there's, I think if there's a massive reduction in tax credits, which I don't see happening, because I mean it's a stimulus package, right? So why would they want to mess up something that's good? But very simply, I mean, if certain countries, or certain states or certain provinces end up doing that, the business is just going to go somewhere else. It's just very simple, because there's a lot of people in the world that absolutely love and endorse tax credits and incentives, and obviously it's a driving force for massive amounts of business.
Yes.
Massive amounts of employment. I mean, the employment rates just skyrocket. Whenever films and television shows come to town. So I just don't see how there would be a severe shakeup in that, to the point where it would have a drastically negative impact on the industry, where massive cuts are being made. I mean, listen, you're always going to have cuts here and cuts there, for budgetary issues. But at the end of the day, it's a great package. It's it's been proven that tax credits and tax credit packages are a positive injection into the industry, into the economy, and it just creates more opportunities.
So I am going to then therefore ask you a very controversial thing, because this is dealing on a recent conversation that we've had in Canada and about the Canadian film industry specifically.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this one is going to be an extremely loaded question. I will put that in advance to all of our viewers. Because recently, going into talks with the Canadian industry and dealing with Capco and Telephone, etc., why do you believe the Canadian film industry is so resistant to becoming marketable? And really, like getting rid of the Capco system and putting something good into place?
In my opinion, I think it's just about politics. Actually, scratch that. I believe, just definitively, I mean, it's just absolutely just about politics. Everything just boils down to politics. They don't want to, they don't have anything to replace it. And then there's another part of them that's like, well, why should we replace it? Do we really want to put in the effort to replace it? Shouldn't we just leave it? We have other issues going on. I think it's a combination of all the above. And to be quite honest, that's why a lot of business obviously leaves Canada. I mean, Canada has a massive problem right now, and I've been saying it for years to the Canadians. Years I've been saying it, is that it lacks infrastructure, like massive, like it needs like a massive injection, in terms of like an infrastructure injection.
Yes.
I mean, now, you just heard a tiff that, Cinespace was building, a new stage, in Toronto, and how Mayor Tory obviously endorsed that and is getting behind it, which is great. That's fabulous. But with all due respect, what the hell is that going to do? I mean,
it isn't.
I mean, really? I mean, does Ontario even know how many millions of dollars that they've lost out on? Millions,
Yes.
and millions and millions of dollars that they've lost out on, not keeping up with the times. And everything in Canada is very politically driven, in my honest opinion. And I know many people are going to disagree with me on this. I think Canada is more politically driven than the U.S. is.
It is.
So you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Because for example, speaking of Capco, we had producers who had spoken to them and said that they wanted to bring a U.S.-Canada co-production. First of all, there's no such creature. Then when asked about that, they were like, well, the producer Canadian? It's like, yes, the producer's Canadian, but they have an American co-producer. You don't count. Okay, the director is Canadian. Awesome. Lead actors, are any of them Canadian? Yes. Okay, that counts. The DP will be filming in both the States and Canada, fine. The production, the editors that they had been mentioned on there, the Tabco points, said that some of the editing was going to be done in Canada, but most of it is done in the States where post-production is being taken place. That doesn't count. I mean, if we had to go through everything on the, and I call it like, you know, Machiavellian Cavco system that was there that did not count. They were like, well, you can't have that and have it count. Your production, it's like we said that there was going to be music pieces when we heard from that person. They said there was going to be Canadian musicians and artists there. Well, if they're not doing the entire score, it doesn't count. It was like, what? And then to turn around and say, oh, but we're giving you 16%. And then we were like, okay, does that include things like locations and things like that, or traveling people in and out? No, that's a different system. So
it was almost like they don't want Americans to film in Canada anymore.
Yeah.
Because they know that America is their ultimate competition. So we don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
We know that America is going to kick our ass, but we just don't want to be embarrassed.
And why does the story have to be a Canadian story? It's like, you know what? America manages to do stories without identity of having to wave the flag every 5 seconds in the shot. And the stories are just good. And there are many, many great Canadian writers, producers, directors, things like that, that it's like, really, like, this system is so broken.
Oh, it's a severely broken system. Severely broken. And listen, I mean, it all I mean, we can really just rip apart this, you know, the whole Cavco thing, but it's really just about the politics. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, it's just it's everything is just severely political. If it doesn't have a political outcome, forget about it in terms of what's good or bad or what's right and wrong. If it's not politically correct, then obviously we just can't do it. Yeah, I know, but it's justified. But the math makes sense. You know, 2 + 2 is actually 4. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if 2 + 2 is actually 4. 2 + 2 in the political world doesn't equal 4. So, you know, then what's the point, right? So, and that's the mindset. You know, in America, the mindset is just, it's more flexible. It's more about like getting things done. Are there a lot of politics in the US? Of course there is, but it's more flexible. There's more of an open-mindedness there. That's why a lot of people plug into telefilm. I think I told you this before. I can't stand telefilm. There's a lot of people that can't stand telefilm. You know, I've never done business with telefilm. I have no interest in doing any business whatsoever with telefilm, and I hope that they're listening to this interview.
Yes.
So for me, it's just, I mean, they are just so it is politics at the pure, you know, in the purest form. Really, it is. I mean, but hey, listen, it works for a lot of Canadians. And you know what? I mean, good for them. I actually salute them. If it works for you, if it works for the type of story that you're trying to tell, I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. I mean, listen, I don't have a problem with people getting essentially what's called free money. If you have a top relationship with telefilm, or if you have a top relationship with the, you know, I'm a little kind of out of date with the whole Canadian thing, but there's that you get that additional boost if you go outside of the outside of the GTA. I forgot what it was called.
Not anymore.
Oh no, not anymore.
Nope.
Oh, that's interesting. They took it away.
Yes, it's like, and I sat there and said, "Wow." And again, it was one of those. I just sat there and.
I think you get like a 10% bump. So they removed that 10% bump now.
Yes.
So when you go outside of the GTA, you get no benefits.
Correct.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's 16%.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, okay."
I think BC still has something like that, where if you go outside of the Greater Vancouver area, you do get a bump. They still have that.
They do. Yeah. But Toronto has completely removed it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was just flabbergasted, floored when I heard from those producers that, oh my God, they've literally just taken it all. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Wow.
And they're like, no, this is what's happening. And I'm like, are you serious? It's like, and also hearing their pugil point system of, it's like this person doesn't count because you have a U.S. co-producer.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've said this before. This is my honest opinion. Listen, do I like the Canadian tax credits in terms of like monetarily? Like, does it make sense financially? Absolutely. In terms of you getting, a great benefit. But in terms of the type of stories that you want to tell, in terms of, the type of people that you want to hire, it could be pretty restrictive. I personally feel, this is my honest opinion, I don't know how many people will agree with what I'm about to say, but I think that the Canadian tax credit system, in my honest opinion, is really at its best through the co-production treaties that it has with 50 other countries or 52 other countries. I think that's really where you can absolutely get the best benefit of being a Canadian and maintaining a Canadian passport and really doing something with the UK or doing something with Germany or doing something with Italy or doing something something with Australia. I mean, on another project I'm doing, I'm looking at it as right from the outset. Right from the outset, it's perfect for the locations. I'm looking at a Canadian-Australia co-production. Yeah. And the incentives in Australia are absolutely phenomenal. And the incentives on the Canadian side are very juicy as well. So it just makes sense. Content-wise, the locations are perfect in Australia. And then the tax credit packages on both sides, they could make a lot of sense, and that's why I'm obviously spending the time that I am in terms of really closely looking at that. But that's where I really think the best benefit is in terms of being a Canadian are those Canadian tax credits, are the Canadian tax credits through that co-production. Through the co-production treaties that Canada maintains. But in terms of Telefilm and Cavco, it's so far buried in politics. I mean, nothing will ever get done.
Yeah. The only thing that will get done is people will go elsewhere to film.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing right now. So between Cavco and Telefilm, I mean, listen, Guillermo del Toro loves it here. He loves it in Toronto. I mean, the crews are great. I have nothing. Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about the production value in the crews here. I have nothing whatsoever. Nothing bad. They are phenomenal. They are absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that they lack is the infrastructure that Los Angeles still has, that the UK has, that Germany has. Bulgaria even has a very interesting infrastructure. I mean, a lot of movies are done in Bulgaria. Now, Bulgaria doesn't have really juicy tax credits. They just have cheap labor. But again, that compensates for not having any really beneficial tax credits. But the labor is incredibly cheap, and you have a lot of major motion pictures that have done that. Stallone has shot movies there. The Expendables, Antonio Banderas has shot movies there. I mean, so a lot of movies have been shot in Bulgaria. Ethan Hawke's movies have been shot there. I mean, it's a great. It's a great place to shoot a movie. Bulgaria, you get a very, very competitive package if it's put together properly. So comparing that to, let's say, dealing with the Cavco system, why would I want to deal with the Cavco system? I could just make a few tweaks, and just amend a few things and hop on a flight to Bulgaria and get the movie done there for a third of the cost, maybe.
Yeah. A fraction of the cost and less political headache.
Yeah, exactly. Way more less political headache. So unless Canada really fixes its act, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. That combined with the lack of infrastructure, to be quite honest, and I know a lot of Canadians are listening to this, but I'm originally Canadian, Odette. You're originally Canadian, but the Canadian infrastructure is very embarrassing. It's very, very embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, you have so much space. You have, so many opportunities here. I've been looking at the longest time wanting to get involved in funding. I never told you this before, but in the funding of studios here.
Yeah.
And I actually had conversations with a few developers and a few producers. And I said, listen, guys, I'll bring in, my hedge funds, I'll bring in my investors, and we can build more studios. And they've been telling me, oh yeah, there's this parcel of land that's available in Hamilton, or there's this parcel that's available in St. Catharines, and we could do this. And this was at the time when that tax credit, that bump was obviously still in play. So we were talking about like a phenomenal, really, really phenomenal package. But again, the politics. Well, this studio doesn't want this, and this studio's hooked in with this government, blah, blah, blah. So then I immediately looked and said, listen, you guys are looking at breaking deals, not really making deals. So best of luck to you. And, I'm going somewhere else, and I'm taking my money and my investors and, my financial models to a place that really wants it, that really wants to embrace, not necessarily change, but embrace opportunities. And right now, specifically Toronto, Ontario specifically right now is not really embracing opportunities.
They have no want or desire to do that.
And it's really sad because I do see a lot of upside here, a lot of upside. I mean, like, I think we spoke about this before. Why Canada does not have not one, and I've been saying this for years, I've been saying way before you and I even got together. And I remember having the conversation with certain studio heads here in Toronto. Yes. Some of the prominent like CEOs of the studios that you and I both know in Toronto, I know them. I know them personally, and I've had the conversations with them face to face. And I've said to them, and interestingly enough, it was made clear, they had mentioned it in the press release for the new studio that they're constructing in Toronto, the new CineSpace studio that they announced at TIFF. And they said in there, there was a little footnote that Canada still does not have one tank to actually film in. And I've been saying it for years. For years I've been saying it. Why is it that Canada does not have one tank? Not a tank to shoot in? Are you guys serious? Are you guys serious? So when you guys are offering such generous, juicy tax credits, the amount of productions that would come in, even if they were partially shooting a sequence or a few sequences and using that tank, the amount of revenue that would be pouring in just by the use of that tank alone would be massive.
Yes.
Would be massive. Why they don't want to construct, why they haven't constructed a tank, I have no idea. But then it was mentioned in that article that now there's talks of constructing a tank and this, that, and the other. But again, if you don't have really good incentives, if you don't have a really good, tax credit, package, which Ontario does have, but now they don't have that boost, right? When you go outside of the GTA, where are you going to put this tank? Where are you going to put it? Where, you can't just have a tank by itself. You got to have a tank in a lot somewhere, right? As part of the infrastructure, as part of the sound stages. Yeah. So it's I still feel that it's very embarrassing. That Canada doesn't even have one tank, and but you look at California. I've lost count in terms of how many tanks they have. Same thing with the UK. Same thing with the UK. They have so many tanks there. Australia. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's what you and I have said. It's like Canada does not want to embrace opportunities. Why? I have no idea. I started figuring it out some time ago, and now I just really don't care.
Yeah. At this point in time, it's just too scary.
Yeah. So
in terms of
if they think it makes financial sense for them, no problem. It's kind of like it's kind of like someone saying, like on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. Well, should we really widen the 405? Should we not? Should we really go through two Carmageddons and really stop traffic and stuff like that? Well, like, come on, guys. Is there really pros and cons to this? No. If you don't do it, it's going to get worse. And they end up doing it. And they not only did one, but they did two of them. So it's, two Carmageddons. So I just don't understand the. I don't understand the political mindset of certain people. If something is good and it makes sense financially, and it's increasing revenue and it's increasing your unemployment rate, why not go for it?
Because they like broken.
Yeah, they do like broken. Like the gardener we talked about, right?
Yes. It's like if you love if you love cement chips falling on your head, it's a great place to drive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what? It's really a shame though, because I mean, Toronto's a great city. Ontario's a great province. It lacks the vision.
Yeah. And someday it'll wake up.
No, hopefully it does. Hopefully it does. Because I can tell you this right now is America is light years ahead in many ways.
Yes.
I mean, in healthcare, obviously Canada is ahead of that. But I think that, America is really coming down very hard in terms of putting together a very what I hope is a very strong healthcare package for all Americans that deserve it, and it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense for everybody. But in terms of everything else, in terms of being competitive and being ambitious, Canada, in my opinion, still has a long way to go. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yes, it's like that single payer system will. You know what they say? It's like healthcare. Is it really free? No, but it's a better system.
Well, let me ask the two of you this: what's being discussed on that side? Because I'm only obviously talking to let's spend 30 seconds here. I'm speaking to a lot of my friends, a lot of my counterparts in the U.S., and then reading what's online. So what's pretty much the consensus so far in terms of health coverage? Are they turning that power? Are they basically giving that power to the individual states, or what's being discussed?
You know what? There's been so many things. Every single time that it seems that they defeat the Trumpist bills, which thank God they do, they break it even more. It's like what happens to the people who are in the gap. If you are destitutely poor, Medicaid is being shut down for you. In terms of those who fall into the gap, which Obamacare put in, it's very sad because you get no government either way. When your health care premiums are $422 a month for a single person, in some states they're higher. How do you do that? How do you reconcile that for somebody who makes $20,000 a year?
That's right, yeah.
They can't afford that. They can't afford privatizing healthcare if they don't have a company healthcare, and then all of their healthcare gets changed. And then we're more worried about what women should do with their uterus than worrying about what's happening in terms of the society that's remaining ill.
That's right. Richard, Richard, what are your thoughts?
Well, you just have to love medical insurance that will allow men to get Viagra, but won't allow women to get birth control. Chelsea Handler did a very funny little fake commercial about that, where the guy has his Viagra. And his wife's like, honey, we can't. I can't get birth control. The government won't let me have it. So go walk it off.
Yep.
Yep.
That's pretty much the way that the broken system has happened. And though it has been introduced single payer healthcare, nobody has tackled that subject yet.
No, but I actually hear that California is really taking the initiative. I mean, I read an article. I think it was. Oh, yeah. So you've read it too. Yeah. So I mean, there's an article that came out a few months ago where Governor Brown was saying that he wants to introduce a single payer system in the state of California. Essentially, California would have its own statewide health care coverage, right? So its own healthcare insurance statewide.
Which makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, so it does make and it makes it makes a lot of sense to me too. But does that fall in line? Correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously it's because I've been reading a lot and obviously receiving a lot of conflicting information. So what California wants to do and what Trump has been saying in terms of turning, giving the power to the individual states, is that kind of like one and the same, or
he doesn't want to give the power to the individual states. What
he doesn't.
He wants to just break the system, and where the rich can pay for healthcare, the poor, sorry if you don't have a way to pay for it.
Okay,
but your medical bill can be $5,000.
Because I remember Trump saying that he was interested in turning, basically, the federal government no longer making the decisions on healthcare, but just essentially turning the power to, giving that power to each individual state. So Massachusetts does what it wants to do. California does what it wants to do.
No.
Once upon a time, Trump said many, many, many things.
Yes.
Unfortunately, none of them are true.
Yeah.
Normally, we don't get very political on this show, but the bottom line is,
I can't wait for impeachment.
There's more about destroying Obama's Affordable Care Act than he does about making sure people have health insurance.
Yeah.
All he cares about is, this is Obama's act, I want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Obama's got this APA act, I want to get rid of it. I want to get rid of everything that Obama did.
Yeah.
That's all Trump cares about. He doesn't care about how to replace.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I really agree with you, Richard. So Richard, you agree with obviously, California's position in terms of statewide health coverage, essentially.
Yeah, they're kind of doing it in conjunction with the Affordable Care Act, as opposed to trying to make it a break from the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Do you think other states will follow suit, like Illinois and?
I think that they will.
I think when they see how it works in California, I think we're in the wait and see period.
Yeah.
But I think if they see that it works in California, then more states are going to adopt it.
Well, it's kind of similar, Odette. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of similar to the Canadian system, where each province has its own. Like in Ontario, we call it OHIP, right? So we have our OHIP card. But in BC, I don't know what BC calls it, but BC has their own. And
BCH something.
Yeah, and then Alberta has their own, right? So correct me if I'm wrong. It's not necessarily federal coverage. It's more kind of like, it's not like it's nationwide coverage, but but each province governs its own medical coverage.
Yeah.
But it is tied into a national health plan.
Correct.
And the thing is across the board, everybody gets health care, whether you're rich, you're poor, and the only difference is in your tax structure at the end of the year. Do you pay into the healthcare system, or do you not pay into the healthcare system after you tally up against your medical bills? But that's done within your taxes.
I honestly think that if California is really the first to do it, it would be. I mean, California being the most populous state in the entire nation, that would be a massive coup. That would be that would create such a ripple effect, a very positive ripple effect, I think. Richard, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think it would cause a very positive.
It would be huge. It would be huge. I can almost guarantee that states across the country are going to look at that model and start to adopt it.
Yeah, so
because if California can make it work, then it's kind of like the whole thing with the legalizing marijuana. In other words, they found out, Colorado, wow, they're making a whole bunch of money because they legalized marijuana. The other states started falling in line and legalizing it. If California can make the health care work, other states will fall. I think they'll fall in line, which would be great because right now I can't afford health insurance, so usually when I go to, if I have to go to the doctor, it's I'm self-pay.
Yeah,
So
I know.
it's crazy.
No, it is. It is great, and the most the most sophisticated nation on the planet, and that's the thing. I mean, we all love America, and it's just that's the one thing that we just
Yeah.
that and gun control, but that's another issue. But for the most part, that's just the one thing that we can't figure out, which is health coverage. It's I really hope that it really does get resolved a lot sooner rather than later.
It will be.
Yeah.
They're hopefully going to be taking care of Orange Napoleon very soon.
Yeah, exactly. And Odette, how does that work for you? Last thing before we move on to the other topics, but obviously, because obviously you were just made into a U.S. citizen, right? So,
yes, correct.
But you had to, correct me if I'm wrong, you had to drop your Canadian citizenship.
No.
Oh, you didn't?
Nope, did not have to drop my Canadian citizenship. So I am a Canarican. Proudly a Canarican.
Okay.
Canarican, so you get to be both.
Yeah,
However,
but I had heard that
Yeah.
unless they changed the law, I had heard that America never acknowledged dual citizen, dual nationalities. So you had to drop your Canadian one and then reapply once you got your American citizenship, unless they've changed.
They have recently changed that.
No, interesting.
Before Orange Napoleon came into power. And what happened is that what you do now is you have your dual citizenship. What you need to do is you need to have both your Canadian and American passports when you're traveling, no matter where you go. You have to have dual passports. When you're leaving America, you have to show them your Canadian passport. When you come into America, you show them your American passport. When you're traveling, you have to show them both. You literally are a citizen of two countries and must carry identification from both countries.
Interesting.
And they have to be kept up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, how does your OHIP come into it?
Actually, OHIP drops you, ironically, after the first year after you've been in America, even when you get into the residential status, which is really ridiculous in its own way.
So you don't have. So when you come back to Toronto, you don't have coverage?
What I have is I go there and wait the 6 weeks for the OHIP to kick back in the application. Then I get 3 months wait, and then everything gets reinstated back to the way it was.
So if you're having a heart attack,
I have to just wait 3 months.
Yeah, but what about but what about in Missouri though? In Missouri, you have coverage there, right?
Through my hubby's work, but what happens is that, an example, I went into an emergency room with a foot injury that it's severely sprained my foot currently. Went in there screaming in pain. The nicest thing, within 5 minutes I was seen. The bill will not be so nice, $2,000, even though that's the American copay. My insurance will cover some of it. And then when you can't pay, they send it to collection agencies.
Wow.
Like a regular debt. As though that you have choices to do that. Clinics here can refuse you service if you have not paid their bills. And urgent care cannot refuse services. However, that being said, they can make your life a living torturous hell. And when you do have Medicaid coverage, sometimes they will treat you like a second-class citizen. Basically, provide you the minimal treatment and then treat you.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, here's a Band-Aid, go.
Wow.
If you have good health care coverage, then they'll treat you better. But if you go outside your network, you pay an arm and a leg.
Wow. That's a shame.
Which is a broken system.
that's like there's a law in Florida where I live that an emergency room cannot turn away a patient because they are unable to pay or lack insurance.
Yeah, I had heard about that law.
Yes.
But not all states have it.
But no. And what they, the catch to the law is all they have to do is stabilize the patient. And then they can let them go. So like if you've had a heart attack, all they have to do is stabilize your symptoms and release you. You're not going to get a room. You're not going to get surgery. Unless the only way to stabilize you is to do surgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of a two-edged sword.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll get treated, but you'll get the very minimum treatment.
Yeah.
And one of the most hilarious parts, though, I will admit, where it is an improvement on this side, is you don't wait, pardon me, 15 hours in a waiting room to be seen by triage. They will triage you right away
Oh, interesting.
in an emergency room. So therefore, if you are in an emergency situation, they treat all emergency situations right away. The longest I've ever waited in a emergency room here was 2 hours.
Hmm.
And that was when it was so packed that it was like insane.
Yeah. Wow.
And literally they'll triage you at that point. They're getting you back there and getting you into what you need to. And if you are truly presenting as an emergency, there is no wait.
Interesting.
So it's a balancing act system. And like with the doctor's office, you're seen right away by your doctor. No 4-hour waiting in the waiting room, hoping that your doctor's going to come in to treat you.
Yeah, I completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still don't believe that on both sides, it's still the same thing, though. One symptom, one visit. We don't get to do multiple symptoms just like in Canada. We don't do multiple symptoms.
Yeah.
It still is one symptom, one visit.
Yeah, I know. Well, hopefully, like I said, hopefully we're making serious advancements, on all of that.
Oh, I know that we are.
Well, they should just let us decide what to do because we know what works, and then lead by what we say.
Yeah, exactly. So that what's the next thing that you wanted to cover?
So back to show business.
Yes.
Let's say you're a new person in the movie making business. Okay, you've got your first film, you've got a good script, you've hired a bunch of people, director, you've got a couple of producers that are helping you out. There's some actors that are interested, and an investor comes to you and says, I will finance your whole movie because I love this script and I love what you're trying to do with it. But I don't think you've hired the right director. So if you want me to finance your entire film, you'll have
somebody
to
newer.
change the director to someone I recommend.
Or basically what is being asked is people with newer experience in the industry versus veterans. Obviously, if you find the financier who wants to do that, how do you overcome the hurdles of being newer in the industry and getting people to actually start believing in you?
So in terms of an investor saying, I just want to be clear. So an investor basically saying, I will finance the movie, but I don't like the director because he's
first time.
So I want to bring in my own director. Here's who it is. He's done 30 movies.
Or choose somebody who is not first time.
Yeah. Well, I've actually experienced that. So
what is the workaround?
So the workaround is just based on my experience is that you try to bring everybody to the table. You try to bring everybody to the table and try to really work out an amicable, a solution that that is justified and that everybody signs off on. But essentially, I mean, listen, there's the simple road, and then there's the not so simple road. So basically, I mean, the not so simple road. Well, the not so simple road could also be very simple, and again, it just depends in terms of who you're dealing with. But if you have an investor that basically says, "Listen, I will fund the movie, but this director, it's his first time. It's a $10 million movie or $5 million movie. He's never done anything. I don't have any confidence that I'm going to get my money back on this first time director." So if you're not in contract with that director, then I would replace him or her. If you're not in contract, you obviously you have to just it's a hard line, but you basically I just have to say, hey, listen, my investor just does not you don't necessarily say my investor doesn't believe in your capabilities, but you basically just have to have a heart-to-heart in terms of saying this movie is not going to get funded with you directing it. I'm sorry, but we can obviously move on to something else that we can do something together in the near future. But and I've had plenty of those conversations, believe me. But the other the other side of it is if you are in contract with that director. Then again, it's really the simple road versus the not so simple road, and the simple road is really trying to prove to that investor, hey, listen, this director he's been pre-approved to be bonded. He's bondable. The production is bonded. He's got really a very strong 1 or 2 producers behind him that are responsible. Not the director, but the producer are responsible for making sure that everything's on time and on budget. So he's got that support, that immense support from 2 very, industry veterans. Even though he's first time or she's first time, they've got the support of 1 or 2, or if not, maybe even 3 good producers. They will bond him. The insurance company will bond him, and the production will be bonded. I don't foresee an issue. Hopefully that investor obviously signs off on that and is okay with that.
Yes.
If that investor says, no, I don't care, doesn't matter what you tell me, I'm not convinced, I want someone who's at least directed, 1 or 2 or 3 movies. Then at that point there, if you're under contract, whether that director has an agent or not, it's really just having a heart-to-heart and literally just saying, if it's with the agent, then really talking directly to the agent or to the manager, not to the client, but to the agent and the manager. And the way that I would do it, I just do it because I'm a very aggressive individual and I'm all about the facts. I would just sit down with the agent and manager and say, listen, here's the reality. My investor will not fund this movie with your client directing this movie. Mm-hmm. So either we find a way to resolve it, or the investor will not put $1 in, which means I don't get paid. You don't get your commission. Nobody earns anything on this movie, and we're basically all just wasting our time. That's the way that I would position it, and that's the way I've had that kind of very,
surrounded by a good team.
Surrounded by a good team, but again, I've had that straightforward conversation where if there is no flexibility, you have to lay down the hard line. You have to basically say, listen, Mr. Agent or Mrs. Agent, your client literally has to step down, or this movie's dead in the water, and it's dead in the water as of right now. If your client is willing to step down, then we could probably maybe bring him or her on as a producer. Maybe obviously, dangle a little carrot there to say, okay, listen, him or her may not be directing, but why don't they come in, be a producer with us, be an executive producer with us. They still collect a paycheck, which means you still collect a commission off of that. And instead of your client directing, he's still involved in a movie. Then the next movie that we do, your client can obviously come in and direct that. But I would say that that's probably, secondary. That's your second option. I would say the first option is really trying to convince the investor by saying, hey, listen, the bond company is behind them. You've got the 2 producers that's already behind them. Maybe even go forward and say, listen, a distributor, whether it be in the US or in Canada or maybe a foreign territory, is really excited to see the movie. Really try to really pack as much value into that pitch to that investor as much as possible, to really try to convince that investor to say, listen, everyone else is behind him or her, you should be too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me throw an extra little tidbit or devil's advocate. Let's say the director maybe is from another country and is, you know, has credit there but doesn't have credit in the U.S.? Is there a workaround for that, or is it still the same thing with what you?
No, it's pretty much still the same thing. I would say at that point there, the way that I would do it is obviously I would not go into contract with anybody. I mean, the thing is that some people are in the industry. They're so stubborn and they're very set in their ways. No, I want my contract and I want my contract now. For me, I like to, and listen, not everybody likes the way that I do things because I'm very methodical. You know, and like I said, I've made a plethora of mistakes and I've learned from them. But now I'm even more methodical than I was before, where if I'm bringing in someone, I want to run this person by this bond company. I want to run this producer, this director by this line producer, by this production manager. I want to do my homework. You know, what have you heard of this director? Is he good? Are they bad? Is she good? Is she bad? Find out before you even draft a contract. If you're dealing with a foreign national who, let's say, is English is his second language, that's even more of an incentive for you to even do more of your homework, to really run that person. Yes. Say, hey, listen, talk to this line producer. Listen, has he gone over budget or has she gone over budget? Have they stayed on schedule? Have they not stayed on schedule? You know, have they gone over schedule? You know, do we have to have an interpreter on set? Does he understand? Is he volatile? I mean, all these different things that you should really find out before you enter into any sort of contract, whether he be a foreign national or English is his second language or not.
Well, and that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, and like I said, not everybody's going to agree with it. Not everybody, you know, you're going to get some pushback. No, I believe in him. No, I believe in her, and they can really do it. And you know, it's the only way to get it done. And you know, not everybody's going to. I've heard it all. You know, Mike, not every director. This is the only director that's really going to just understand this script, and you don't have any other option but to go with this director. I've heard it all. You're going to have all those obstacles, and at the end of the day, it always goes back to, listen, are you working with me or are you working against me? You know, it's all about knowing who you're getting involved with. Because I literally, guys, I can drop so many details. I've heard it all. I mean, and that's probably the most, you know, that's probably the most notable. You know, that's probably the one thing that really sticks in my mind is people saying that, Mike, we finally have a director that's interested, and we've been, you know, out with this thing for 3 months, and everybody has said no, and you're not going to get another director on board, and who cares if he or she doesn't know how to speak English? And it's like, yeah, but okay, I understand what you're saying, right? You want to get the deal done, you want to get paid. I totally get that, but guess what? Just because you and I say yes, or you and I force ourselves to say yes, doesn't mean that the bond company is going to force themselves to say yes. Doesn't mean that the producer is going to force themselves. Doesn't mean the investor is going to force. Doesn't mean the distributor is going to force themselves. So you just have to look at the reality. A lot of people in Hollywood are trapped in the fantasy. They're not looking at the reality of how things are actually done and how things are actually interpreted.
Right. So, and to help things along, if this director is bonded, and when you say have a one or two, veteran producers that are backing them, in other words, through the bonding, and like the veteran producers is like a letter from that producer, just so they are listening.
A letter. I mean, a letter stating, or the fact that they're behind the project, an LOI, something that from those producers that basically state that they back the director, they're really excited about the project. He or she really has the vision for it. Really has the the energy and the creative juice for it. And then really getting a letter from that bond company that says the same thing. And I've seen those letters before, because ultimately it's really going to be that bond company that ultimately, if that bond company says no, then I would say, I mean, I'm not going to say you're dead in the water with that director, but you're pretty much almost dead in the water, because I don't see anybody signing on to a non-bonded film with a first-time director.
Correct.
That's perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I seem to notice a sort of mantra that kind of has gone through everything that you've been saying today, and that is make sure you know who you're working with.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Also make sure you have the strongest team around you.
The strongest team around, yeah, but I cannot emphasize it enough. Just make sure, I mean, it's like it's like what people say about their friends, right? You know,
Yes.
just make sure you know who your friends are. You know, you're not going to let everybody into your circle. It's the same. You know, it's the same notion that should be applied to. You know, to getting involved with a team of people to make a movie, or you know, a team of people to start a marijuana business, or a team of people to flip a property. It's the same thing. Just know who you're getting into. You know who you're getting involved with. Know what you're getting into with the people that you're getting into it with.
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
I cannot stress that enough. And when all of us get together off the record, believe me, I can share my war stories and specific
yes, please.
things, and it's consistent. Richard, you said it. It's absolutely consistent in what I've been saying, but that's just my experience. And listen, I don't agree with it. It's really tragic that it has to be that way, because it really hurts a lot of people. But then, you begin to realize, and that's the one thing that I've realized. The one thing that I've realized today, even with veterans, I've dealt with so many veterans, and you're like, oh, wow, great. Yeah. Oh, you really want to work together? Oh, that's exciting. This, that, and the other. And then you come to find out very quickly, they don't care about you. They don't care about the movie. They just care about collecting a paycheck. So really, they're just using
very true.
So really, they're just using you, and you need to find that out sooner rather than later. And listen, it's not the fact that it's not the fact that I'm so in tune with my vetting capabilities.
Yeah.
Because I do. I have very, very strong vetting capabilities.
Yes.
Very, very strong. But it's not 100% perfect. And like I said, I've made tons of mistakes. But it's not just me, Mike Gianfriddo, that just, you got to be on your toes, because people always say that all the time. Even like in a real estate transaction, people often, say, and sure, it's flattering. It's nice to hear, but it's like, Mike, I told them, if I have to get Mike on the phone, know what he's going to do. And it's like, and I say to people, you make it sound like I'm some sort of,
monster.
Possessed pit bull or something. And no, I'm not like that. I just like to conduct good business, close deals, and make money. I'm just a very simple, normal person. But it's not just me that I tell people. I always tell people, if you think I'm bad, wait until you talk to this investor, or wait until you talk to this person, who has an attention span of like 10 seconds. I've spoken to investors like that on the phone, and it's like, they don't want to hear about stuff like I'm dealing with, for example, one transaction right now, not to get into it. It's completely like non-film related, but it's just the fact that it's like, okay, you have a deck, you have a complete nice overview. Here's the venture. It gets right into the numbers right away. Yes, it looks interesting, but you know what, Mike? Can you put it all into a one-pager for me, so that way I can see everything on one page? And I literally said to one of my close friends last week, you have got to be kidding me. No, Mike. And I said, so let me guess. I told him, I said, let me guess the type of investor that we're dealing with. So I told him exactly. I don't even know the investor because it came in from one of my partners. I don't even know who the check writer is, right? But he's very prominent. Well, now I know who it is, right? Because he told me who it is. But at that time, I didn't know who it was. And I said, well, let me just guess who this investor is. And I literally, within 10 seconds, told him exactly who the investor is without me knowing who the investor is. And he's like, Mike, you're absolutely right. That's who you're dealing with. And it's like, but again, it's just like, you either play the game or you don't play the game. That's just the way that it is. And a lot of people in Hollywood, they think, well, I'm not going to play your game. You're only good for one thing, just writing the check. And nowadays, investors are not like that. Investors they want more transparency. They want to be more involved. They want to really know every minute detail. And a lot of people in Hollywood don't like that. So what I usually say to them, well, if you don't like it, nobody's forcing your arm to take the money. Walk down the street to B of A and try to get a loan from them.
Yeah.
And that's the harsh reality of it. And that's what I've always said to our viewers. I've always given them the harsh reality, no sugarcoating.
No.
You know that, Odette. No sugarcoating, no nothing.
Exactly.
So that's just a harsh reality. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and it all depends upon the bottom line. Again, you know who you work with, deal with who you work with, and figure out when you what is it that they want too.
Yeah, and it's not only
What's in it for
exactly,
them?
and just to adding what Richard said, it's not just so much like I've been saying, it's not so much just knowing who you're getting involved with, but it's also what, and I've said this before in our previous interviews as well. What are they bringing to the venture? What are they bringing? Well, Mike, I'm a line producer. I'm a distributor. I used to, represent, I used to represent actors or whatever, and I can bring all this value to the table. Well, again, one of the mistakes that I've made very early on in my career, and Odette, I'm pretty sure you made it, and Richard or Olaf, and I'm pretty sure all you guys have made those mistakes where it's like, you believe them because, you IMDb them, you look at their credit, oh, great, they look fantastic, blah, 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 blah. Well, what I've quickly learned is don't tell me what you can bring, show me what you can bring. Show me what you can bring. You represent this buyer, you represent this client, really? Give me some indication that they've read the script. Send me an email. You don't have to forward me the email with their address on it. Like, you have to basically outsmart the people that you're dealing with, because a lot of people in Hollywood, they think that they're smarter than everybody else. Certainly they think that they're far more intelligent than the investors. You will find that just throughout Hollywood. They just think that they're smarter than any investor, and they just get laughed at. I mean, the investors literally just laugh their asses off at these people. And I'm actually one of them. I just can't stop laughing, because the fact that you guys think that even if they were smarter than the investor, you don't show an investor. You don't show an investor and say, I'm smarter than you, and here's why. That's the person that's cutting you the check. You got to be respectful. You got to be patient with them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, but it's not so much as backing up. It's not so much of knowing the people that you're getting involved with, but knowing what they can bring. What are they contributing? If they start saying, well, I will bring this and I will bring that. Well, again, one of the benefits of having OCD is, in that little equation where you say will, what does that mean? You will. So that means that you will be providing something at a certain given time during this process. But what are you bringing? What are you bringing right now? I know what I'm bringing. I brought the tax credits. I've brought the bank that's lending against the tax credits. I've brought this. I brought that. So you're saying that you will bring something when you're comfortable in bringing it. So basically, when I've done all the legwork, when I've done everything, and there's that remaining 1% that needs to be done, that's when you're going to come in, and that's when you're going to bring in your supposed value. And by bringing in that remaining 1%, you're expecting to collect a $300,000 paycheck or a $500,000 paycheck or whatever it is. Which for most people probably works. It doesn't work with Mike Gianfriddo.
Exactly.
And people get offended by that. And that's fine. If you want to, I usually tell people, if you want to go in the corner and cry, I mean, that's your prerogative. If you want to yell and scream, that's your prerogative. But it is what it is. I'm all about what's fair. I'm all about what's fair and what is in the best interest of the production.
Yeah.
And what is in the best interest of the venture. I mean, listen, have I taken cuts on my fees before? Of course I have. Because at the end of the day, I always tell people, and people love me for saying this, whether it be in real estate or in film or in M&A or whatever it is, some money is better than none.
Yes.
Okay? A deal is better than no deal. I'm not telling a 30-year investment banker to take a cut of $90,000 to collect a $10,000 pay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but if everybody comes down, pari passu, and everybody's all equal, then everybody should do it in the best interest of the venture. Because, like I said, a deal is better than no deal. Some money is better than none.
True.
And anybody, and another message to our viewers, anybody on your team or anybody that you're interviewing to jump on board your team, if they do not have that mindset, or if you believe that they don't have that mindset, drop them. Drop them, faster than you can blink.
Exactly.
Yes, the film comes first.
Yeah, absolutely. The film comes first.
And this is an industry of business, not an industry of also feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a business of feelings, but really you have to park.
Yes.
You really have to park your feelings at the door. You can't let emotions get part of it. A lot of people do. A lot of people really just get very emotional about it. And listen, I mean, I'm one of them that used to get emotional about it. Now I'm at a point where it's like I just go where the money is. That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all in this to make movies and make money. Otherwise, what the hell are we doing? We're not here wasting time and running fundraisers. You know what I mean? So, everybody's in the business to make movies, have a good time, but it's also to make money. So that's that's just my perspective on that. But like Richard has said, he's seen the pattern in terms of what's been at the core of the facts that I've been expressing here today, and that is just know who you're getting involved with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of like films, have you got like a timeline breakdown, kind of a release of the films you're working with?
I've got. Well, I mean, right now my priority is this TV show, just because it's always had. I mean, I was doing. Well, I'm in the middle of doing some other productions as well. Some other sci-fi and horror and other other genre specific films. But this television series, this series here, it's always been the one that's right from the very beginning. Even working those other projects, it's always been the one that's had the most interest from the industry. So that's really my priority. So. Ideally, we're out to networks right now, so that series is fully developed. It's advanced. There's a Bible. There's there's scripts. The first season is done. A pilot script that knock on wood. So far, everybody really loves it. Really, really, really likes it a lot, and hopefully everybody else will. But we're basically out to showrunners right now and networks, and we're hoping to get some positive thumbs up. An entire thumbs up would probably be best, but a thumbs up on a network getting behind it, whether it be that network is Netflix or Showtime or Stars or whatever it is. Getting the network behind it, and then essentially entering pre-production. I mean, because the financing on that one is pretty much done. I already have the financing in place for that sci-fi series, but we can't move off the peg unless there's a network behind it, right? Because otherwise you're funding into a void, right? So you're literally putting money into something where you don't even know where the bottom is. So. That's where we're at right now. So we're at just securing a network, and we hope to get that done here in the next coming months. So that way, ideally, early next year, we're in pre-production.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's really what my intention is. As everybody knows in this industry, everything takes so damn long. Everything just takes so damn long to get done. People learn the hard way that I have no patience. So, but and I don't. And to be quite honest, and like I said, I'll be the first one to admit it. If somebody were to ask me, Mike, do you piss people off because you have no patience? Absolutely, I'll be the first one to admit. I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, there's no benefit in me lying. I absolutely piss a lot of people off because I have no patience. But it's not just the fact that I piss people off because I have no patience. That's not really the way that I look at it. I just look at it and saying the reason that I have no patience and the reason that I piss people off is because my objective is to get things done and get things done quickly and efficiently. Yeah. So when things are delayed, and they're delayed because there's this holiday, there's that holiday, my email stopped working on my phone. I was driving somewhere. I had to take my daughter to her ballerina class, and then I got drunk afterward. And like just these excuses, just one excuse after the other. I just have no patience for it. It's like, guys, are we gonna get a deal done, or aren't we? Because because you're not the only one that's got personal lives. You're not the only one that's going through all this stuff. You know, people are still funding deals. People are still closing. People are still working through the holidays. I can understand if it was, you know, throughout the entire industry. I'm talking about financing. Is that, you know, if everybody was on vacation, then I completely understand. But you know, things are still in motion. Things are still moving forward. So when things are delayed, and they're delayed for no real reason that I believe, that's when I start to get annoyed.
Well, what you do is just when people ask you if you have no patience, or when about your patients, just say, "I'm not a doctor. I don't have patience."
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, we're like I said, we're all in the business to get stuff done, to make money, to make movies, and have a good time. So, again, like I said earlier, is that if we're doing everything but that, what the hell are we doing?
True.
Right.
And as Grayson pointed out at the beginning, my T-shirt that I'm wearing, I hope is going to become the mantra for our organization, and that is enough excuses.
That's right. That's right. I see there's a bit of a shadow there, so I'd like to. I don't know. Can you point the camera down so I can see more of the shirt? Let me see. Enough. There we go. I like.
Yeah. Cherries Garcia.
Enough excuses. I like that. I might have to steal that. No, I'm kidding.
That's okay.
And we'll brand this. Actually, you know what we should do? We should brand this interview and just title it "Enough Excuses" with Mike Gianfriddo.
Yes.
Yes. Change the title.
Change the title. Enough Excuses with Grayson Sonata, Richard and Olaf with special guest Mike Gianfriddo. Let's do that.
Yes.
There you go. That takes care of it right there.
That takes care of it right there. While Olaf is still sitting in traffic or driving through the backwoods of Indiana right now.
Let's see. I'll just show you. There you go. I'm just cruising down the highway right now.
And it's amazing to me that, are you still in Illinois? Or are you in Indiana?
Oh no, I'm in the great state of Indiana now.
Oh, okay. So I'm surprised you actually have 4G signal.
Well, I've kind of cut in and out a little bit through this interview. It's kind of dropped off, but let's see. I think I'm about 50 miles this side of Indianapolis right now.
Oh, okay. I haven't been to Indianapolis, but I'm living to go. It's gorgeous there.
It's actually really cool there.
Yeah, it is. It really
is. And it's strange, but it's true. If you ask people, well, why do you call it the great state of Indiana? They'll say, because Olaf lives here.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's right.
Little view of the countryside there.
I'm surprised there's not a sign there, Olaf, that says "Welcome home, Olaf."
That's when I get closer to my actual home. Then it'll that sign will show up. It's like it shows all the dust on my dash. Yeah,
I've been to so many states, but Indiana I absolutely want to go to, and what was it? Vermont is another state that I really want to go to Vermont. I've been to a lot of. The whole country is just gorgeous, but I don't know how much Odette, how much traveling you've done across the country.
Everywhere states except for 3 of them that I've discovered.
Which is?
I have not been to Kentucky, not been to Hawaii, and not been to Vermont.
Okay. So you've been to New Hampshire. You've been to you've been to Maine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful place.
Oh no, yeah, I can imagine. Vermont, I hear, is gorgeous. I love Massachusetts. I love Massachusetts. I love. I drove through Maryland, like literally just skimmed it, but that is one place that has always just been on my I literally just want to travel throughout the entire state. Maryland, I just love I just love Maryland. Like, it's just so. I mean, when I was driving on the freeway that day and I had passed it, and it's just gorgeous.
Yep.
It's just such a gorgeous area.
Yeah. I'm going to interject something real quick here. You in all the discussions and the different shows that we do, and talking about technology and everything, and it still has to fascinate me. Here I am. I'm driving down the highway, and I'm talking to you all, doing the show. I've done several shows from the road, and to be running 75 mile an hour down the road and being able to participate in a radio show is just fascinating to me.
No, I completely agree with you, Olaf. I completely agree with you. Technology, my friend, technology. That's where we live.
Yes, it's like this is where we thank Google Hangouts. And we also thank very much as well. Yep, thank you, Google Hangouts. And also at the same time, we also thank Production Next.
Yes, thank you, Production Next. Thank you, Google Hangouts. And thank you, Odette. Thank you, Olaf. And thank you, Richard.
So where do we find you in social media, Michael?
So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I have my personal Facebook page, and then I also have my company Facebook page, Dominant Entertainment. So you can either search for Dominant Entertainment or Mike Gianfriddo on Facebook. Instagram, Mike Gianfriddo. LinkedIn, Mike Gianfriddo. Very active on LinkedIn. And also Snapchat as well. So I've recently expanded out to Snap, and feel free to follow me there as well.
Very cool. How do you find Snapchat? Just as a curiosity.
I'm sorry?
How do you find Snapchat?
What do you mean, like the app?
Like, how do you like it? Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I actually really love Snapchat. I really do. I actually, I'm a techie aficionado. Like I know, like I'm very techie, but I actually found it very. I actually had to have my head down because I didn't know that much about Snapchat. I didn't actually know that people could actually follow you on Snap. Like Instagram,
Nice.
like Instagram. Like I don't know how much you use Snap, Odette, but
I haven't yet.
yeah, but I didn't know that people could actually follow you on Snap like they do on Instagram. I honestly thought Snapchat.
Cool.
I honestly thought Snapchat was just another, private messaging platform, except it had all these different filters and avatars and emojis and stuff like that. I didn't know that, but it's not. But that's what it is. You can actually. It's like Instagram. You can just,
Nice.
People follow you on it, random people, and you post things, and it's mostly for videos and stuff like that. You have a lot of neat filters, a lot of really great filters on Snapchat. You can really have a lot of fun with them and really interact with your audience. So I highly recommend it. I'm not as active on Snapchat because I'm still learning it, but I strongly recommend it. It's a phenomenal platform.
Nice.
So you should definitely create your own on Snap. It doesn't have, I think it's in a lot of ways doesn't have the flexibility that Instagram has, but in other ways it has flexibility that Instagram doesn't have. Both platforms you can follow, you can follow people, they can follow you. But you can't just interact. Like, for example, like when you post something on Instagram, people can actually like your posts, right? So they can like it,
Yeah.
They can view it. Like you can keep track in terms of, I have 140,000 likes or something like that, or 8 likes. On Snapchat, you can only view who has actually viewed your post, but there's not an option for them to actually like it.
Interesting.
So there's pros and cons to it, but it's definitely fully interactive. I don't know, Odette, I didn't notice that you had an Instagram page, or are you active on social networks?
I am on Facebook and on Twitter as well.
I don't have Twitter. I do not have Twitter.
Yeah, it's like I find I knew it to Twitter. I finally figured out how to tweet back to people after the longest period of time, and I realized that if you go beyond one sentence, you don't get to tweet.
Yeah,
It cuts you off.
I don't have Twitter. I don't know how to use Twitter, but I've been told many times, Mike, you got to get Twitter. You got to get Twitter. So I might start getting into it. But I mean, the whole hashtagging and stuff like that, I was getting used to that before, but now I think I'm pretty okay with it.
You heard that there's YouTube and Twitter and Facebook were going to all merge together, didn't you?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, well, they're going to call the new platform. They're going to call it UTwitface.
UTwitface. I like that. UTwitface. That is too funny. I got to remember that. UTwitface. What about you, Richard? Are you pretty active on social network?
So how do we get you, Richard?
Well, if you want to be sociable, you can reach me on Facebook. If you want to do some business or talk about business, I am on LinkedIn as well. And, I'm a guy who just like to chat. So please, Skype me. Add me to your Skype friends. I'd really appreciate that. But like Production Next, you want to make sure you say that you are a fan of movie time. Because I get way too many offers of marriage for obedient women and robots who want my charge card numbers.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And Richard, I'm gonna be the first one that says this. So let me add you to Facebook. So what is it?
It's Richard Poshard, Poshard.
Yeah.
Richard Poshard, Illinois Wesleyan University.
Yep.
That's our dude.
That's our dude. Interesting profile pic as well.
Yeah. And Olaf, how do they get you on social media?
Well, currently I was incorrect. I'm not 50 miles out of Indianapolis. I'm 20. So currently, if you're driving on I-65 South, you can follow me there. But otherwise,
let me get in my car, Olaf. Let me get in my car.
That's like that. You gotta at least be going 75 to keep up with me. Anyway, it's like you can follow me there, but you can also stalk me on both Facebook and Twitter at Olaf Barbosa. But just don't stalk too close, because I do get. I said I do get nervous, and I do have an itchy trigger finger.
He also owns a lot of weaponry.
Yeah, I got my gun with me. See? So I had to do it. Oh, where'd it go? Lost it. Yep.
There we go.
There we go. I got it.
Well,
there you go.
I've just invited both of you guys, Olaf and Richard, to Facebook. So feel free to accept that whenever you guys are ready. And then I gotta get into tweeting, because I'm so far. I don't even have a Twitter account, and I could probably. I mean, this whole thing with this whole interview, we probably could have picked up. I don't know how many more.
Actually, it is on our Twitter.
No, I know, but it's not on my Twitter. Right? Richard, it's probably on yours or on Olaf's, right?
Actually, on both.
On both, yeah. So.
Now, I will say it might be a few minutes before I actually accept your Facebook thing. I'm a little busy at the moment.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Let me just get in my car and head over to, what is it? What are you on?
I-65.
I-65.
Yeah, I-65 South, and just get about ready to hit. It's like downtown Indy.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Well, listen. There we go. Who accepted me? Yes. Richard. There he is.
Yes, live on air.
Show up.
I have accepted you.
There is Richard. So, listen, Odette, I really appreciate it. And Richard, great talking to you. Olaf, great talking to you. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to say?
Well, we will definitely be having you again, because we have more questions, as you know, each and every time.
That's absolutely fine. You can feel free to reach out anytime. Did I answer all the questions, to your satisfaction?
Yes. Absolutely. It's like a dead song.
And Richard, what about you? Did I meet your expectations?
Well, I haven't even met my expectations yet, so I wouldn't be able to introduce you to them.
That is too funny. And Olaf, I don't know about what your expectations are because you're in the middle of I-65 right now. So
Yeah, I have very simple expectations. I just want to make it home.
that's it. What's your ETA?
Let's see. I'm about about 2 hours.
Oh, okay. How's the weather?
It's getting a little cloudy right now, so it's been clear, a little cloudy, but I don't think it's going to rain.
Is the temperature scheduled to drop, especially in and around Illinois? Any snow coming in Illinois?
I don't think so. No, right now it's about 43 degrees where I'm at.
Oh, okay.
So that's short sleeve weather for me.
Okay.
And Olaf, in about 7 miles, watch out for the overturned gasoline tanker. It's about to blow.
Oh, good. Looks like I said I actually have some hot dogs, some marshmallows. I'm just going to stop at me and bought it.
That's right.
Yeah, buddy.
And Richard's enjoying what? Are you enjoying the sun down in Florida?
I enjoy the sun. I enjoy my neighbors. But I especially enjoy spending my whole day working with Grayson.
Yeah, it's like we all get to work together.
That's right. So what's in it for what's on the agenda next, guys? I mean, obviously AFM, right? So you're going to be there.
Indeedy.
And then from AFM, I think you're going halfway across the country after that, right?
Rhode Island.
That's it.
All the way across the country.
All the way across the country, right to Rhode. That's another place that I've gone. I really love Rhode Island. It was the thing with Rhode Island though is the bulk of the time that I spent there, I was kind of like in the middle of nowhere land in Rhode Island, where I would be on the highway and I'd literally like have to. It was like a never-ending road. I would be driving and driving and driving and driving and driving. It's like, am I going to reach a town anytime soon? And it's like a 2-lane highway, right? So it's like 2 lanes going in. In some parts, it was actually 1 lane going in, 1 lane going out, and I'm like, okay, like, where's the hotel? Is it coming up or what? But for the most part, it's beautiful. I love Rhode Island, and then I drove from Rhode Island to Boston, and I mean that was just phenomenal. The thing about Boston, I just can't wait to go back. I mean, obviously, I've been on Gracie, you obviously know this, is that I've been on a diet, obviously, recently, but. I just wish that I could have indulged in more of that good old Massachusetts food, but I will. I will. As long as we have the nearest gym near to me, then we should be fine.
True.
But the food out there is absolutely incredible. The cuisine is it's amazing. The way
I'm looking forward to it.
The way they stack those burgers, the way they make those pizzas. Whew.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, my waistline will be expanding even as we speak.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you. So, what about you, Richard? Before I let you guys, before we end off, have you guys done a lot of traveling across the country? You and Olaf?
Olaf more than me. I haven't traveled much.
Yeah,
I'm starting.
Let's see. At one point, there was about 4 states that I had not been in yet, and I have actually been to Hawaii.
You have or haven't?
I actually have been to Hawaii, and I've been to the Bahamas, and pretty much all across the U.S. But no, there's I think about 4 states I haven't been in, and I can't remember which ones they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Florida. I haven't been to Colorado. I'm really wanting to go to Colorado. I haven't been there. I haven't been to Montana. I really want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not been to. There's a lot of states. I've been to a lot of states, but there's just a few of the key states that a few states that I haven't been to. I haven't been, and I'm only obviously I'm only indicating the ones that I really have an immediate desire for. Obviously, I want to eventually go to all 50 states, but Washington State, specifically Seattle, that has been on my bucket list for the longest time. I hear it's absolutely gorgeous there.
It is beautiful in Seattle.
Especially if you like rain.
Especially where?
Especially if you like rain.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does tend to rain quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I've been to Vancouver, BC.
I don't really. I've been to Seattle before. That's one of the places I've been. I don't remember a whole lot because I was only 6 years old. But
And what about Montana, guys? Do you guys like Montana? I hear the scenery. I hear the scenery out there is just like picturesque to die for.
And Montana is probably, from what I've heard, a lot safer to drive through than Colorado. Because I've heard if you're not careful in Colorado, there's like this big hole that you might drive into by accident. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. They call it the Grand Canyon, but it's basically in the big hole.
Interesting. Well, Colorado, I'll definitely keep that in mind. And Iowa, I've been to Iowa. Iowa's great.
Yeah.
Iowa's nice.
Yeah, Iowa's nice. Iowa's great. The Carolinas are great. The Carolinas are great.
Did you go to south of the border before you go through South Carolina?
Where? Florida or?
No, in South Carolina. Just before you go there, there's this place called south of the border.
No, I haven't been there. I've been through South Carolina, North Carolina. No, I haven't been to that to the southern border.
Okay, between North Carolina and South Carolina, there's this little city called south of the border. Next time that you go, absolutely adorable.
Really?
It's like the most cutest place.
Interesting. I should check it out south of the border, and then Tennessee. I really want to go. I have heard so many things about Tennessee. I can't remember what it's called, but people always rave about whatever that's what is that street festival or something that they have every year. I don't know what it's called.
Well, they have the Street Rod Nationals down there in Pigeon Forge, which is and then you've got Gatlinburg, Tennessee. You got Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is like, two cities next to each other, and they have
And also, I have to admit, another one was in Tennessee, Nashville.
Yeah.
Visiting that, of course.
Yeah.
If you go down there during it was like January or so, they still have the Christmas lights up and stuff.
Oh yeah.
In Gatlinburg and stuff, so it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then of course Nashville. It's like Nashville's a really great place to go.
Of course, yeah.
It's like I've been. It's like been
Memphis.
Memphis, yeah. So Tennessee, Tennessee, I definitely want to check out. I like Georgia. I've been to Georgia. Georgia's great.
Yes.
In the summer, though, it's incredibly brutal, like brutality in its purest form. So,
right near the Tennessee-Georgia border, there is a tourist trap town called Chattanooga, and they have a place called Lookout Mountain. It's a mountain, but you go up there, and the view is spectacular.
Really?
On a clear day, you can see like 10 states.
Wow. Wow, I have to check that out. I mean, even like New Mexico. I haven't been to New Mexico. Obviously, it's been a great.
Pretty.
That's what I hear. I hear it's incredible. I spent obviously, as you guys know, a lot of my time in California, but I hear New Mexico is just absolutely gorgeous.
Now, I've been to, as far as New Mexico, I've been to Cimarron, New Mexico. I've spent a couple summers a couple weeks there during the summer. In Cimarron is Philmont, which is the Boy Scout ranch. It's 300 or it's a huge amount of acreage, and they have all kinds of trail stuff. But I've been to Philmont a couple of times, and I have some relatives that live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been there a couple of times, and just it's hot. It may be 100 degrees, but it is so it doesn't feel like it's 100 degrees.
Well, let me tell you is that I've enjoyed many different types of cuisine throughout the country, and obviously I'm continuing to enjoy even more as I continue to travel. But let me tell you, when I was in Florida, Richard, where you are, I've had so many phenomenal meals there. I've had phenomenal meals even in California, everywhere I've gone, Massachusetts, but Florida, I always think about, I forgot the name of it, but I know exactly where it is. There is, Grayson, I don't know if you've been down to the Keys, but I've been down to Naples and the Keys.
Yep.
Right on Key Largo, right after you pass that bridge, there's a bridge, and you enter Key Largo. On the left-hand side, as you're entering into the Keys, on the left-hand side, on the driver's side, there's a buffet there. And it's all fish, all seafood.
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
And lobster, like I cannot even begin to describe, like the size of these lobsters, all you can eat.
Wow.
I must have been in there for like 4 hours or something. 4 or 5, I think it was like 5 hours, literally. Just like fresh seafood, lobster tail, crab, every seafood that you can think of was in that restaurant right on Key Largo, and it was incredible. Richard, I don't know how many times you've made it out to the Keys, but the restaurants there, specifically that one buffet, to die for.
I've only been to the Keys once, and in Key West, we ate at a restaurant that was owned by, oh gosh,